In this video, we're breaking down 2 hours of mind-bending Family Guy theories that will definitely blow your mind. Let's get started. We're starting it off with the theory that Peter's older brother is dead. The line that changes everything. In Season 10, Episode 1 of Family Guy, called Lottery Fever, Peter Griffin becomes rich. Like most things in Peter's life, he handles it badly. He becomes mean. He becomes cruel. He treats his friends Joe and Quagmire like garbage, but it's what he says to his son Chris that sends chills down your spine. Peter is sitting in a fancy chair, looking at old sailor art through a magnifying glass. Chris and Meg try to impress their newly rich father. Chris tells Peter about his yacht race. Meg mentions a newspaper story about her, but Peter doesn't care. He brushes them both off. Then he says something that seems like just another Peter Griffin joke, but it's actually much darker. Chris, try as you may, you will never be as good as your older brother who died, Peter tells his son. He was good at sports and talking. Most people watching this episode probably laughed. It seems like typical Family Guy humor, random, dark, and meaningless. But what if it wasn't meaningless? What if this one throwaway line reveals the biggest secret about Peter Griffin? What if Peter actually had an older brother who died, and that death shaped everything about who Peter became? The brother we never knew. The show never brings up this older brother again. We never see flashbacks. We never hear Thelma or Francis mention him, but that doesn't mean he didn't exist. In fact, it makes perfect sense that no one talks about him. Families don't like to talk about dead children. It's too painful. It's too sad. So they bury that pain deep down and never speak of it again. Let's call this brother Peter Jr., since Francis Griffin probably wanted to name his first son after himself. Peter Jr. would have been everything Francis wanted in a son: good at sports, good at talking, smart, athletic, probably more serious than Peter. Maybe he even looked more like Francis, and then something terrible happened, an accident. Maybe he drowned. Maybe it was a car crash. Maybe he fell from somewhere high. The details don't matter. What matters is that Peter Jr. died young, and the wrong son survived. Francis Griffin's cruelty makes sense now. Throughout the entire run of Family Guy, Francis Griffin is shown as one of the meanest characters on the show. He's a hardcore Catholic who hates everyone who doesn't believe exactly what he believes. He especially hates Peter's wife Lois because she's Protestant. He calls her a Protestant whore at their wedding. He hits Brian with a Bible for questioning religion. He's cold. He's cruel. He's impossible to please. But why does Francis treat Peter so badly? The show revealed in Season 5's Peter's Two Dads that Francis isn't even Peter's real father. Francis knows this. Throughout Peter's childhood, Francis would tell Peter, "I'm not your father." Francis knows Peter is the result of his wife Thelma having an affair with an Irish man named Mickey McFinnigan. But here's the thing that makes the Peter Jr. theory so powerful. What if Francis had a real son? What if Peter Jr. was actually Francis's biological child? What if Francis loved that boy with all his heart, and then that boy died, and Francis was stuck raising another man's son, a son who reminded him every single day that his real son was gone, a son who couldn't live up to his dead brother's memory? In Take My Wife, Peter hits himself on the head with a coconut and suddenly remembers something. He remembers being abused by his dad. This is canon. This actually happened in the show. Francis Griffin was abusive. He hurt Peter. And if the Peter Jr. theory is true, we now understand why. Every time Francis looked at Peter, he saw the wrong son. He saw the son who lived while his real son died. That's the kind of resentment that turns into abuse. Peter's sister Karen makes it even worse. In Peter's Sister, we learn that Peter has an older sister named Karen Griffin. Karen made Peter's childhood a living nightmare. She beat him up. She bullied him. She even farted on his face. The episode reveals that Peter's abuse of Meg comes directly from Karen's abuse of him. Meg looks like Karen, so Peter takes out his childhood pain on his daughter. But think about this through the lens of the Peter Jr. theory. Karen is Francis's daughter from a previous marriage. If Peter Jr. existed, Karen would have known him too. Maybe Karen loved her little brother, Peter Jr. Maybe she was devastated when he died. And then here comes Peter. this fat, dumb kid who isn't even related to her by blood. This kid who replaced her real brother. Karen would have resented Peter just like Frances did. The entire household blamed Peter for not being Peter Jr. Peter's mother, Thelma, was the only one who showed him any love, and even she was neglectful. In flashbacks, we see her throwing whiskey bottles at young Peter. She leaves him alone with Frances for days while she goes gambling. Even his own mother couldn't fully commit to loving him because he reminded her that her first son was gone. A child frozen in time. Child psychologists know that trauma can stop emotional development. When something terrible happens to a child, they can get stuck at that age emotionally, even as their body grows up. This is called arrested development, and this is exactly what happened to Peter Griffin. Think about how Peter acts. He's basically a giant child. He loves cartoons. He plays with toys. He can't handle responsibility. He throws tantrums. He needs constant attention. He makes impulsive decisions without thinking about consequences. In Petarded, it's revealed that Peter is actually mentally disabled. His IQ is so low that he's classified as mentally challenged. But what if Peter's low intelligence isn't just genetics? What if it's trauma? What if Peter Jr.'s death happened when Peter was young, maybe 7 or 8 years old? And what if Peter's brain just stopped growing after that? Because the trauma was too much, because the guilt was too heavy, because everyone blamed him for surviving when the better son died. Peter never matured past childhood because, emotionally, he's still that little boy. The little boy who lost his brother, the little boy whose father hated him, the little boy who could never be good enough no matter how hard he tried. So he stopped trying. He stopped growing. He retreated into childishness because being a child was safer than facing the pain of being an adult who survived when someone better didn't. The death wish Peter can't escape. Peter Griffin should have died 1,000 times over. He's fallen off cliffs. He's been hit by cars. He's been shot. He's been blown up. He's done every dangerous and stupid thing imaginable. And yet he always survives. This isn't just cartoon logic. This is survivor's guilt manifesting as a death wish. People who feel guilty about surviving when others died often engage in risky behavior. It's subconscious. They don't even realize they're doing it. But part of them believes they deserve to die. Part of them wants to die. Because how can they enjoy life when someone they loved is dead? How can they be happy when the better person isn't here anymore? Peter's alcoholism makes sense through this lens too. He's trying to drink away the pain. He's trying to forget. In Peter's Two Dads, when Frances dies, Peter feels so guilty that he quits drinking. He even tries crack cocaine instead, which Brian correctly points out is not a good substitute. Peter can't handle loss without numbing himself somehow. And Frances's final words to Peter? Peter, you're a fat, stinking drunk. Those words haunt Peter. They echo what Frances probably said about Peter his entire life. You're not good enough. You're a disappointment. You're a drunk. Why couldn't you be more like your brother? Why did he die instead of you? Mickey McFinnigan, the father Peter needed, but never had. When Peter travels to Ireland in Peter's Two Dads, he finds his biological father, Mickey McFinnigan. And what is Mickey? He's the town drunk. It's considered an honorable position in his Irish village. Mickey is everything Frances hated: irresponsible, drunk, silly, and fun. Peter sees Mickey, and it's like looking in a mirror. This is who Peter really is. This is his true bloodline, not the serious, religious, cruel Frances Griffin, but the fun-loving, heavy-drinking Mickey McFinnigan. And the only way Peter can prove to Mickey that he's his real son is by out-drinking him. Peter uses Frances's last words, "fat, stinking drunk," as motivation. He beats Mickey in a drinking contest, and Mickey finally accepts Peter as his son. This moment is more meaningful when you consider the Peter Jr. theory. Peter finally finds a father who accepts him exactly as he is, a father who doesn't compare him to a dead brother, a father who sees being a drunk as something to be proud of rather than something shameful. For the first time in his life, Peter doesn't have to be someone else. He doesn't have to live up to a ghost. How Peter treats his own children. The saddest part of the Peter Jr. theory is how it explains Peter's relationship with his own kids. Peter treats Meg terribly. He forgets she exists. He tells her to shut up. He plays cruel pranks on her. In Peter's Daughter, we see flashbacks of Peter tripping her, flicking her nose, and even shooting her. When Peter becomes rich in Lottery Fever, he tells Meg her life holds no merit because she's a girl. But Peter's treatment of Meg mirrors exactly how he was treated growing up. Peter learned from Francis that children are disposable, that some children matter more than others, that it's okay to have a favorite and let everyone know it. Francis preferred the son who died. Peter prefers Chris over Meg. The cycle of abuse continues. And look at what Peter says to Chris in Lottery Fever. He literally tells his son that Chris will never be as good as a dead sibling. Peter is doing to Chris exactly what Francis did to him. He's comparing Chris to someone who doesn't exist anymore, someone who will always be perfect in memory because dead people don't make mistakes. Dead people don't disappoint you. This is heartbreaking because it shows that Peter, despite everything, became his father, the man he hated, the man who abused him. Peter swore he'd never be like Francis Griffin. But trauma has a way of making us repeat the same patterns. Peter doesn't know how to be a good father because he never had one. The guilt Peter carries every day. Imagine being Peter Griffin. Imagine growing up knowing that everyone wished you were dead instead of your brother. Imagine your father telling you repeatedly that he's not your real dad, that you're a disappointment, that you'll never measure up. Imagine your sister beating you up because you're not her real brother. Imagine your mother getting drunk and leaving you alone because taking care of you reminds her of the son she lost. Now imagine carrying that guilt for your entire life. Every morning you wake up and remember, I'm alive and he's not. I gotta grow up and he didn't. I gotta have a family and he never will. And the worst part? Everyone thinks the world would be better if it had been reversed. If you had died and he had lived. That's the weight Peter Griffin carries. And he carries it through alcohol, through childish behavior, through reckless stunts that should kill him but somehow don't, through failed job after failed job, through ruined relationships and broken promises. Peter is a man running away from the ghost of a dead brother he can never escape. When Peter becomes rich, in Lottery Fever, he finally has a chance to prove his worth. He can finally show everyone that he's not worthless, that he deserves to have survived. But what does he do? He destroys everything. He alienates his friends. He wastes all his money. He loses it all twice. Because deep down, Peter doesn't believe he deserves good things. People who survive when others die often sabotage their own success. They don't feel worthy of happiness. The evidence hiding in plain sight. The brilliance of the Peter Jr. theory is how it makes everything else in Family Guy make more sense. Why is Peter so afraid of Francis's ghost in Family Guy? Because Francis represents judgment. Francis represents failure. Francis represents the constant reminder that Peter was never good enough. Why does Peter have such low self-esteem despite acting confident? Because confidence is his mask. It's his shield. He acts like he doesn't care what people think because he cares too much. He learned early that trying to be good enough will never work, so he stopped trying. He became the class clown, the drunk, the fool. If everyone expects you to be a failure, you might as well embrace it. Why is Peter so loyal to his friends Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland? Because they accept him without judgment. They don't compare him to anyone. They don't wish he was someone else. The Drunken Clam is Peter's safe space. It's the one place where he can be himself without the ghost of a dead brother hanging over him. Why does Peter cling so desperately to Lois? Because she chose him. Out of all the men in the world, Lois Schmidt chose Peter Griffin. She didn't wish he was someone else. She didn't compare him to a ghost. She loved him for who he was. And Peter holds on to that love like a drowning man holds on to a life raft. The tragedy of Peter Griffin. Most people see Peter Griffin as a funny character. He's fat, he's stupid, he does crazy things. He's the butt of jokes. But when you look deeper, when you consider the Peter Jr. theory, Peter becomes one of the most tragic characters on television. He's a man who survived when he shouldn't have, a man who spent his entire childhood being told he was the wrong son, a man whose stepfather abused him, a man whose sister tormented him, a man whose mother neglected him, a man who never had a chance to develop normally because trauma froze him at a young age. And the worst part? Peter doesn't even remember his brother. He was too young, or maybe the trauma blocked the memory, but the impact remains. The guilt remains. The feeling of not being good enough remains. Even if Peter can't consciously remember Peter Jr., his entire personality is shaped by that loss. That's why the line in Lottery Fever is so devastating. In a moment of drunken honesty, Peter reveals a truth he usually keeps buried. There was another brother, a better brother. A brother who died. And somewhere deep in Peter's broken psyche, he spent his entire life trying to prove he deserved to survive. Why this theory matters. The Peter Jr. theory transforms Family Guy from a crude comedy into something deeper. It gives meaning to Peter's behavior. It explains why he is the way he is. It turns random cruelty into generational trauma. It makes Francis Griffin's abuse understandable, even if not forgivable. It shows how one death can ripple through time, affecting not just one generation but multiple generations. Peter treats Meg badly because Francis treated Peter badly, and Francis treated Peter badly because Peter Jr. died. And Peter's children will probably treat their own children badly someday because this is what they learned. Trauma doesn't die with one person. It spreads. It infects. It continues until someone is brave enough to break the cycle. The theory also makes us sympathize with Peter in a way we normally wouldn't. Yes, he's terrible to his family. Yes, he makes awful decisions. Yes, he's racist and sexist and homophobic. But he's also a deeply damaged person who never got the help he needed. He's a victim of abuse who became an abuser. He's a survivor carrying guilt that isn't his to carry. The line we can't ignore. Try as you may, you will never be as good as your older brother who died. This isn't just a joke. It's Peter's entire life in one sentence. It's every comparison Francis made. It's every beating Francis gave. It's every time Francis looked at Peter with disappointment. It's every moment Peter felt like he didn't deserve to be alive. And now Peter is saying it to Chris. The cycle continues. The ghost of Peter Jr. haunts not just Peter, but Peter's children too. A boy who died decades ago still controls the Griffin family from beyond the grave. His absence is more powerful than anyone's presence. This is the true tragedy of Peter Griffin. He survived, but he never got to live. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Dr. Hartman created Ernie the giant chicken in a failed experiment. The confession everyone missed. In Season 9, Episode 8 of Family Guy, called New Kidney in Town, something amazing happens. Dr. Hartman tells the Griffin family something that changes everything we know about the show. Peter needs a kidney transplant. The family is worried. They're talking about options. And then Dr. Hartman says something casual. Something that sounds like a joke. But it's not a joke. It's a confession. Well, stranger things have happened in medicine, Doctor. Hartman says, I once tried to clone a chicken, and it ended up being a man-sized chicken that was extremely hostile and escaped from the lab. Peter looks at him and says, Doc, we'll have to have a talk about this later. That's it. That's the whole exchange. Most people probably laughed and moved on. Just another random Family Guy moment. But wait, think about what Dr. Hartman just said. He tried to clone a chicken. It became man-sized. It was extremely hostile, and it escaped from the lab. Does that sound familiar? It should. Because there's only one man-sized chicken in Quahog who is extremely hostile and causes chaos everywhere he goes. His name is Ernie. Ernie the giant chicken. And Dr. Hartman just admitted he created him. This is actually canon. This isn't fan theory. This isn't speculation. This is actually in the show. Dr. Hartman, the most incompetent doctor in television history, admitted on screen that he created a hostile man-sized chicken that escaped from his lab. The show's creators put this line in on purpose. They wanted us to know. Ernie the giant chicken isn't some random monster. He's not a natural creature. He's the product of failed medical science. He's Dr. Hartman's biggest mistake walking around on two legs, destroying Quahog over and over again. Think about how insane this is. Dr. Hartman is a doctor, not a scientist, not a geneticist, just a regular doctor who can barely diagnose a common cold. And somehow this man thought it would be a good idea to try cloning chickens, not for science, not for research, just because he felt like it. And what happened? He created an immortal killing machine. This explains everything. Every single thing about Ernie the giant chicken suddenly makes perfect sense when you realize he's a failed cloning experiment. The superhuman strength, the regeneration, the inability to die, the rage, the intelligence, all of it is because Dr. Hartman played God and failed spectacularly. Ernie is not normal. Let's talk about what Ernie can do. Because Ernie isn't just a big chicken, he's something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist. Ernie is immortal, not in the funny cartoon way where characters survive explosions. Ernie is actually, literally, immortal. He's been through things that would kill any living creature 100 times over. In blind ambition, his head gets chopped to pieces by an airplane propeller. In internal affairs, he's hanged, then pierced, then roasted alive by rocket engines. In No Chris Left Behind, Peter beats him with a frying pan so hard his skull caves in. And what happens every single time? Ernie survives. At the end of each fight, after Peter walks away thinking he's won, we see it. Ernie's eye opens, his body twitches, he gets up, he heals, and he waits for the next time. This isn't normal. This isn't how living things work. Even in Family Guy's crazy world, people die. Characters get hurt. But Ernie never dies. He never even stays down for long. His body regenerates. His injuries heal beyond what should be possible. He grows back limbs. He recovers from having his head destroyed. He's literally unkillable. Why? Because Dr. Hartman's cloning experiment went wrong. Whatever Hartman did to that chicken at the genetic level made it impossible for Ernie to die. Hartman was trying to clone regular chickens, probably for some stupid reason like making unlimited KFC, but something went wrong in the process. The chicken's cells mutated. The growth hormones went crazy. The DNA got scrambled, and out came Ernie, 6 feet tall, impossibly strong, and biologically immortal. The rage that never ends. But Ernie's immortality isn't the scariest part. The scariest part is his rage. Dr. Hartman specifically said the chicken was extremely hostile. That's not normal chicken behavior. Regular chickens don't attack people. They run away. They're scared of everything. But Ernie attacks on sight. Ernie fights until one of them is dead, except he never stays dead. Ernie's entire existence is fueled by rage. Why is Ernie so angry? Because the cloning process messed up his brain. Think about what cloning does. You're making an exact copy of something. But when you clone complex organisms, things go wrong. The nervous system gets damaged, the brain doesn't develop right, and if you're trying to clone a chicken but you accidentally make it human-sized, everything inside is stretched and wrong and broken. Ernie lives in constant pain. His body isn't supposed to be that size. His chicken brain is trying to control a body that's 6 times bigger than it should be. His organs are struggling. His bones are stressed. Every single moment of his existence hurts, and he can't die to end the pain. He's trapped in an immortal body that never stops suffering. That's why he's so hostile. That's why he attacks Peter over an expired coupon. That's why he fights like a demon every single time. Ernie isn't fighting Peter. Ernie is fighting his own existence. He's trying to die, but he can't, because Dr. Hartman's experiment made death impossible for him. The adrenaline rush Ernie gets when he sees Peter gives him immunity to pain and superhuman combat skills. His body floods with chemicals trying to make sense of the rage and pain. In those moments of fighting, Ernie probably feels alive for the only time. The rush of combat drowns out the constant agony of existing in a body that shouldn't exist. The escaped lab monster. Dr. Hartman said the chicken escaped from the lab. This is crucial. Ernie didn't walk away. He escaped. That means Dr. Hartman was keeping him prisoner, probably in cages, probably running experiments on him, trying to figure out what went wrong, trying to fix his mistake. Imagine what that was like for Ernie. Imagine waking up in a body that's not yours, a body that hurts, a body that's wrong, and there's this human in a white coat poking you with needles, running tests, keeping you locked up. You don't understand why you exist. You don't understand what happened to you. All you know is pain and fear and rage. And then one day, Ernie broke out. Maybe he got too strong. Maybe Hartman's staff got careless. Maybe Ernie was smart enough to figure out the lock. But he got out. He broke free from Hartman's lab and disappeared into Quahog. What did Hartman do? Nothing. He didn't report it. He didn't warn anyone. He just let this immortal rage monster loose in the city. Because admitting what he'd done would cost him his medical license, would probably get him arrested, so Hartman just said nothing. He let an innocent chicken man that he'd created and tortured escape into the world, with no help, no explanation, nothing. This makes Dr. Hartman a monster. Not the funny, incompetent doctor we laugh at, an actual monster. He created life, failed to care for it properly, tortured it with experiments, and then let it loose on an unsuspecting public without any warning. Every person Ernie has killed, and there are hundreds, their blood is on Dr. Hartman's hands. The expired coupon, where it all began. In Da Boom, we learn how the feud between Peter and Ernie started. Ernie gave Peter a coupon at a store. When Peter tried to use it, the coupon was expired. Peter got angry. He attacked Ernie, and their first fight began. But here's what people miss. Why did Ernie have expired coupons? He's a giant chicken. Where did he even get coupons? The answer is heartbreaking. Ernie was trying to be normal. After escaping from Hartman's lab, Ernie tried to build a life. He got a job, probably at a fast food place or a grocery store, somewhere that gave out coupons. He was trying to be helpful, trying to do something nice by giving Peter a discount, and Peter beat him half to death for it. Ernie probably didn't even know the coupon was expired. He's a mutant chicken with scrambled brains. Reading dates is probably hard for him. He was just trying to help someone. And that person beat him unconscious and threw him off a building. That was Ernie's introduction to human society. Kindness met with violence. An honest mistake met with attempted murder. Is it any wonder he became hostile? Is it any wonder he attacks Peter on sight now? Ernie learned that humans are dangerous, that Peter specifically is dangerous. So now, whenever he sees Peter, his mutated brain goes into fight mode, survival mode, kill or be killed mode. The chicken fights are mutual destruction. The fights between Peter and Ernie are legendary. They're the show's biggest running gag. Epic battles that last minutes, destroying entire city blocks, killing hundreds of innocent people caught in the crossfire. Buildings collapse, cars explode, ships sink, planes crash. The destruction is unimaginable. But look at what's really happening. These aren't fights. This is mutual attempted suicide. Peter is an alcoholic with self-destructive tendencies. Ernie is an immortal mutant in constant pain. Neither one wants to lose, but neither one really wants to win either. They want the fight itself. They need it. Peter says it out loud in Fecal Matters when Ernie is dying of bird flu. Yes, even immortal mutants can get sick. Peter admits the truth. Every day, I wake up not knowing if you're gonna come out of nowhere and punch me in the face. I flinch every time a door opens. I look over my shoulder every time I bend down to tie my shoes, and I flip my porch light on every night before I go to bed just to see if you're standing there. Do you have any idea how exciting that is? Peter needs Ernie, the fear, the danger, the adrenaline. It's the only time Peter feels truly alive. His boring job, his nagging wife, his disappointing kids, all of that disappears when Ernie shows up. In those moments, Peter has a purpose, an enemy, a reason to fight. And Ernie needs Peter too. Fighting Peter is the only time his pain goes away. The only time his mutated body works the way it should. The adrenaline floods his system. His regeneration kicks into overdrive. For those few minutes, Ernie isn't a failed experiment. He's a warrior. He's powerful. He's in control. They're addicted to each other. Two broken creatures locked in an endless cycle of violence because neither one knows how to stop. And the entire city of Quahog pays the price. The body count is astronomical. Let's talk about the real victims here, the citizens of Quahog. Every time Peter and Ernie fight, hundreds of people die, hundreds more are injured, billions of dollars in property damage, and nobody ever holds anyone accountable. In their first fight in Da Boom, they destroy downtown Quahog. A tanker truck explodes, a cargo ship sinks, buildings collapse. In blind ambition, they tear through a train station, a cruise ship, and an airport. An airplane crashes. In Internal Affairs, they literally fight through time and space, destroy a genetic research lab, blow up an oil rig, and kill everyone in sight. These aren't cartoon deaths. The show makes it clear people are dying. We see bodies. We see people screaming. We see families running for their lives. Seamus, the local sea captain, literally has his marriage proposal ruined when a grenade from Peter and Ernie's fight crashes through a coffee shop window while he's asking out a barista. That man's entire romantic life was destroyed by collateral damage from a chicken fight, and nobody does anything about it. The police don't arrest Peter or Ernie. The news doesn't cover it. The city doesn't evacuate when these fights start. Everyone just accepts that sometimes a fat man and a giant chicken will fight to the death through the streets, and hundreds of people will die. That's just life in Quahog. Why? Because Dr. Hartman never admitted what he did. If Hartman had come clean immediately after Ernie escaped, the city could have prepared. They could have had protocols. They could have captured Ernie and gotten him help. But Hartman said nothing. So Ernie roams free. A walking weapon of mass destruction. A failed experiment that kills innocent people because one incompetent doctor wanted to play God with chicken DNA. Dr. Hartman's other crimes. Let's not forget that Dr. Hartman is spectacularly incompetent at his actual job too. This is a man who regularly kills his patients through negligence. He once prescribed megadoses of testosterone that turned Chris Griffin into a violent rage monster. He performed a vasectomy on Peter and somehow messed it up. He's left surgical tools inside people's bodies. He's misdiagnosed literally every patient who's ever walked through his door. But cloning a mutant chicken? That's not incompetence. That's criminal. That's playing with genetic material without training or oversight. That's conducting illegal experiments that should have gotten him arrested decades ago. Where did Hartman even get the equipment to clone chickens? You can't just order chicken cloning machines from Amazon. This requires expensive laboratory equipment, genetic sequencing machines, growth chambers, specialized chemicals. How did a small-town doctor in Rhode Island afford all that? Where was he doing these experiments? In his clinic? In his house? In some secret underground lab? And Ernie probably wasn't the only one. Hartman said he tried to clone a chicken like it was no big deal, like cloning things was something he did regularly. How many other failed experiments are out there? How many other mutant animals escaped from Hartman's lab? Are there mutant cats? Mutant dogs? Mutant rabbits roaming the streets of Quahog waiting to snap? The scariest part is that nobody knows. Hartman mentioned it once, Peter said they'd talk about it later, and then it was never brought up again. Hartman faced zero consequences. He's still practicing medicine. He's still treating patients. He's still out there potentially creating more genetic horrors in his spare time. Ernie's tragic family life. What makes Ernie's story even sadder is that he built a life despite everything. In Internal Affairs, we meet his wife, Nicole, another giant chicken. They have children together. Multiple children. They live in a house. They're trying to be a normal family. Think about how hard that must be for Ernie. He's a genetic mutant created in a lab. He's immortal. He lives in constant pain. He's filled with uncontrollable rage. But somehow he found love. He found someone who accepts him, someone who understands him. And they built a life together. Nicole must be a mutant too. Regular chickens aren't that size. Maybe she's another one of Hartman's experiments. Maybe Ernie found her because misery loves company. Two genetic mistakes finding each other and trying to build something normal out of their abnormal existence. But what kind of life can you have when your husband randomly gets into city-destroying fights with a fat man several times a year? Nicole has to sit at home wondering if Ernie will come back. Their children grow up watching their father stumble home, bloodied and broken, only to heal and go through it all again. In The Chicken or the Meg, their teenage son Nugget starts dating Meg Griffin, and Ernie has to tell his son's girlfriend to choose between Peter or the relationship. That's not normal parenting. That's a father trying to protect his family from a cycle of violence he can't escape. Ernie died trying to protect his family. Meg decapitated him in season 23 when he tried to make her choose between Peter and Nugget. His last act was trying to keep his son away from the Griffin family's chaos. After decades of being unkillable, after surviving everything imaginable, Ernie finally died defending his family, and nobody mourned him, nobody held a funeral, nobody even remembered him. The producers said they killed him off because the chicken fights were too hard to animate. That's how Ernie's story ends. A mutant created by medical malpractice, tortured by his own existence, locked in an endless cycle of violence, dies protecting his family and is immediately forgotten. His suffering finally over, his mistakes finally forgiven, his pain finally ended. The cover-up continues. The craziest part about all this? Dr. Hartman is still practicing medicine in Quahog. He still treats the Griffin family. Nobody has arrested him. Nobody has reported him. The medical board hasn't investigated him. He's still out there, potentially running more illegal genetic experiments, and nobody cares. Peter said, "Doc, we'll have to have a talk about this later." But they never did. Peter never followed up. He just forgot about it. Or maybe he didn't want to know more. Because once you admit that Dr. Hartman created Ernie, you have to face the truth. All those deaths are Hartman's fault. All that destruction is Hartman's fault. Peter's decade-long feud with Ernie exists because Dr. Hartman made a genetic monster and let it escape. That's too big, too real. So Peter ignored it. Everyone ignored it. The truth stayed buried. And Dr. Hartman kept practicing medicine, probably creating more abominations in his spare time, because nobody was willing to hold him accountable. This is medical malpractice on a cosmic scale. This isn't giving someone the wrong prescription. This isn't leaving a scalpel inside someone's body. This is creating illegal life through genetic manipulation, torturing that life with experiments, allowing it to escape into society, and then never warning anyone about the immortal rage monster walking around your city. Dr. Hartman should be in prison for life, maybe multiple life sentences, one for every person Ernie killed, one for every person who died in the crossfire of Peter and Ernie's fights, one for Ernie himself, for creating life only to abandon it to pain and suffering. But he's not in prison. He's in Quahog, treating patients, making jokes, acting incompetent, and somewhere there might be more mutants, more failed experiments, more genetic horrors waiting to emerge from whatever secret lab Hartman is running. The chicken fights are over, Ernie is dead, but Dr. Hartman is still out there, and that's the scariest thought of all. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Susie Swanson being CIA Director Bullock's remote-controlled avatar. Susie Swanson is CIA Director Bullock's remote-controlled avatar, the voice that gives it all away. There's something strange about Susie Swanson, something that nobody in Quahog talks about, something that hides in plain sight. When you watch Family Guy, you might notice that sometimes we hear what baby Susie is thinking, her inner voice, her thoughts, and that voice sounds like an adult man, a very specific adult man, Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart is a famous actor. You know him from Star Trek, you know him from X-Men, and if you watch Seth MacFarlane shows, you know him from American Dad, where he voices CIA Director Avery Bullock. The same Patrick Stewart who voices Susie Swanson's inner thoughts in Family Guy. Why would a baby girl have the voice of a grown British man inside her head? The show never explains it. Most people probably think it's just a joke. Patrick Stewart doing a funny cameo. But what if it's not a joke? What if it's the truth hiding in plain sight? What if Susie Swanson isn't really Susie Swanson at all? What if she's CIA Director Avery Bullock wearing a baby suit? The CIA has avatar technology. This sounds crazy, but it's actually canon. It's actually in the show. In American Dad, Season 8, Episode 5, called Virtual Insanity, we learn something shocking about the CIA. They have technology that lets people control fake bodies. Bodies that look and act real. Bodies of any shape, any size, any age. These bodies are called avatars. You sit in a special chair at CIA headquarters, you put on controls, and suddenly you're inside another body somewhere else in the world. You see what it sees. You control what it does. You can be anyone, anywhere. In the episode, Stan Smith uses this technology to become a teenage girl named Phyllis so he can spend time with his son Steve. The avatar looks completely real. It talks, it moves, it even eats food. Nobody can tell it's fake, not even Stan's own son. But here's the important part. CIA Director Bullock also has an avatar, and his avatar is a baby. The show confirms this. Bullock has a baby avatar that he uses for what the show calls nutritional purposes. We don't see much of it, but we know it exists. We know the CIA Director of American Dad controls a baby body remotely. Now ask yourself, what show exists in the same universe as American Dad? What show has the same creator? What show has characters that cross over? Family Guy. Family Guy and American Dad happen in the same world, and in that world, the CIA has baby avatars, and CIA Director Bullock uses baby avatars, and Patrick Stewart voices CIA Director Bullock, and Patrick Stewart voices Susie Swanson's inner thoughts. Joe Swanson, more than just a cop. Let's talk about Joe Swanson. He's Susie's father. He lives next door to the Griffin family. He's a police officer in Quahog, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. Most people know this basic information, but there's more to Joe's story, much more. Joe wasn't always a regular cop. Before his injury, Joe did special police work, dangerous work. In the episode Joe's Revenge, we learn the truth about how Joe got paralyzed. For years, Joe told people he was chasing a criminal on Christmas and slipped on a roller skate, but that was a lie, a cover story. The truth? Joe was working undercover in a drug operation. He was investigating a major narcotics dealer named Bobby Briggs. Joe had to pretend to be a criminal himself. He went deep into the drug world. He saw things. He learned things. Things that maybe he wasn't supposed to know. Bobby Briggs found out Joe was a cop, and Bobby shot him, twice, once in each leg. Joe survived, but he never walked again. The operation fell apart. Bobby escaped. And Joe spent years in a wheelchair, hiding what really happened. Now think about this. Joe did undercover drug work. That means Joe worked with federal agencies, the DEA, maybe the FBI, maybe even the CIA. When you do big narcotics investigations, you don't work alone. You work with government agencies that have more power, more resources, more secrets. What if Joe saw something during that operation? What if he learned something he wasn't supposed to know? What if there are files in Joe's house, evidence, recordings? What if Joe Swanson, disabled cop living in Quahog, Rhode Island, is sitting on information that could embarrass or expose the CIA? The CIA wouldn't just let that go. They would watch him. They would monitor him. They would make sure he never talks. And what better way to watch someone than to put a spy literally inside their house? A spy in the crib. Think about where Susie sleeps. In Joe and Bonnie's house, in a crib in their bedroom or nearby. She's there every night, every day. She sees everything. She hears everything. Conversations between Joe and Bonnie. Phone calls, visitors, mail, documents. A baby is perfect cover. Nobody suspects a baby. Nobody watches what they say around a baby. Nobody hides documents from a baby. A baby can sit in the middle of the living room and nobody thinks twice. People forget babies are even there. But what if the baby isn't really a baby? What if it's a 60-year-old CIA director sitting in a chair at Langley, Virginia, controlling a fake baby body in Quahog, Rhode Island? What if every time we hear Susie's thoughts in Patrick Stewart's voice, we're actually hearing Bullock, the real Bullock, monitoring Joe Swanson through the perfect disguise? Look at when Susie's inner voice appears in the show. It's not random. Patrick Stewart voices her thoughts in specific episodes. The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair, Thanksgiving, Internal Affairs, and Joe's Revenge. These episodes involve Joe specifically. They're about Joe's life, Joe's past, Joe's problems, the episodes where Bullock would need to pay attention. In The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair, Susie's first thought is literally breaking the fourth wall. She says, "This is Patrick Stewart. How are you liking the program so far?" It's played as a joke. But what if it's Bullock acknowledging that he's there, watching, listening? What if it's Bullock making fun of the fact that nobody realizes the truth? The timeline fits perfectly. Let's look at when Susie was born. She appears in Season 7, Episode 7, Ocean's 3.5. This is in 2008. Before this, Joe and Bonnie talk about having a baby for years. Bonnie is pregnant forever. It becomes a running joke. She's pregnant for what feels like 10 years of showtime. But then suddenly, Susie is born. right around 2008 to 2009, the same time period when American Dad is firmly established, the same time period when the CIA avatar technology appears on American Dad. The timing is suspicious. Think about it from the CIA's perspective. Joe Swanson got shot in his undercover operation sometime in the 1990 seconds. He's been disabled for years. He moved to Quahog. He's been living there quietly. Maybe the CIA thought he wasn't a threat anymore. Maybe they stopped watching him closely. But then something changed. Maybe Joe started talking to someone. Maybe old evidence resurfaced. Maybe someone from Joe's past came back. The CIA realizes they need eyes on Joe again. But Joe is smart. Joe would notice if CIA agents started following him. Joe would spot surveillance. So they need something subtle, something Joe would never suspect. And conveniently, Joe's wife, Bonnie, is pregnant, or about to get pregnant, or can be made to think she's pregnant. The CIA has the technology to fake a baby. They have avatar bodies. They can make one that looks like Joe and Bonnie's child. Bonnie gives birth, but maybe the real baby doesn't survive. Or maybe there never was a real baby. Maybe the CIA replaces it with an avatar. Maybe Bonnie doesn't even know. Maybe the avatar baby looks exactly like what their real baby would have looked like. Hair color, eye color, face shape, all designed to be believable. And suddenly the CIA has a permanent spy living in Joe Swanson's house, a spy that will never grow up, never move away, never stop watching, because it's not really a baby. It's Avery Bullock in a tiny body that never needs sleep and never has to leave. The shared universe connection. Family Guy and American Dad existing in the same universe isn't theory. It's confirmed many times. Characters from one show appear in the other show. They reference each other. In American Dad, characters watch Family Guy on TV. Stan Smith explicitly calls Brian Griffin his favorite fictional dog. The shows acknowledge each other constantly. This means everything that's true in American Dad is also true in Family Guy. The CIA in American Dad is the same CIA in Family Guy. The technology that exists in American Dad also exists in Family Guy. If Bullock has baby avatars in American Dad, then those same baby avatars can exist in Family Guy. The CIA is everywhere in the Seth MacFarlane universe. They have unlimited resources, unlimited technology. They conduct illegal experiments. They break laws. They spy on American citizens. They've done brain transplants. That's how Brian the dog can talk. Remember the theory? They've created genetic mutants. They've developed time travel technology that Stewie somehow got his hands on. Avatar technology is honestly one of their least crazy inventions, and if they have it, they would use it. They would use it to spy on anyone they deemed a threat. And Joe Swanson, former undercover agent who worked on narcotics cases, absolutely qualifies as someone worth watching. Patrick Stewart playing both roles. Let's go back to the voice. Patrick Stewart voices Director Bullock. Patrick Stewart voices Susie's inner thoughts. Why would Seth MacFarlane cast the same actor for both roles unless they were connected? Seth MacFarlane is clever. He plants clues. He makes connections between his shows. When he has Patrick Stewart voice both a CIA director and a baby's thoughts, that's not random. That's intentional. He's telling us something. He's showing us the truth, but making it look like a joke. Think about Patrick Stewart's character in both shows. As Director Bullock, he's paranoid, controlling, always running operations, always scheming, always watching. He doesn't trust anyone. He monitors everyone. He has cameras everywhere. He runs the CIA like his personal spy agency. Now think about Susie's thoughts when we hear them. They're not baby thoughts. They're adult thoughts. Observations, comments. In the hand that rocks the wheelchair, Susie thinks, "This feels right, but it tastes like a dirty penny." That's not how a baby thinks. That's how an adult thinks. An adult who isn't used to the taste receptors of a baby body. An adult who's experiencing sensations that feel wrong because he's in a body that isn't really his. Every time we hear Susie's inner voice, we're not hearing Susie. We're hearing Bullock. We're hearing his thoughts as he operates the avatar. We're hearing his observations as he monitors the Swanson household. We're hearing him react to things he sees and hears while pretending to be a baby. the baby who never grows up. Here's another clue. Susie doesn't age. She was born in 2008. It's been 17 years in real time, 16 years of showtime, and Susie is still a baby. She's barely 1 year old. She never grows. She never develops. She stays frozen in time. Some Family Guy characters age slowly, that's true. Time moves strangely in animated shows. But Susie is extreme. She literally hasn't changed at all. She's the same size, the same age, the same everything. No growth, no development, nothing. Why? Because she's not real. Because avatar bodies don't grow. They're manufactured. They're built to a specific size, and they stay that size. The CIA made a baby body for Bullock to control. That body will always be a baby. It can't grow. It can't age. It's frozen forever in baby form. This explains why Bonnie and Joe don't seem concerned. Most parents would worry if their child didn't develop, didn't grow, didn't reach milestones. But Joe and Bonnie never mention it. They never take Susie to doctors. They never worry about her development, because maybe they know, maybe the CIA told them, or maybe the avatar is programmed to make them not notice, to make them think everything is normal even when it's not. The perfect surveillance device. Let's think about what the CIA gets from this arrangement. They have an agent inside Joe Swanson's house 24/7, an agent that never sleeps, never takes breaks, never goes off duty. An agent that Joe and Bonnie welcome into their home, into their bedroom, into their most private spaces. Bullock can watch everything. He can listen to every conversation. He can see every document Joe brings home. He can monitor Joe's computer, his phone, his mail, everything. And Joe has no idea. Because why would he suspect his own baby daughter? The avatar probably has cameras, microphones, recording devices, built right into the fake body. Everything Bullock sees and hears gets transmitted back to CIA headquarters, gets stored in files, gets analyzed by agents. The CIA builds a complete picture of Joe Swanson's life, his habits, his routines, his contacts, his secrets. And if Joe ever tries to reveal what he knows from his undercover days, if he ever tries to go public with information, if he ever becomes a threat, the CIA knows immediately, because Bullock is right there. Sitting at Joe's dinner table, sleeping in Joe's house, listening to every word. It's the perfect surveillance system, and Joe walks right into the trap, because nobody suspects babies. Nobody thinks twice about bringing a baby home from the hospital. Nobody questions why the baby's inner voice sounds like Patrick Stewart, because it's a cartoon, because it's funny, because it's just a joke. Except, it's not a joke, it's the truth. Hiding in plain sight, laughing at us, daring us to see it. Why Joe Swanson, specifically? Out of everyone in Quahog, why does the CIA need to watch Joe? Why not Peter? Why not Quagmire? Why not Cleveland? What makes Joe special? Joe's past. Joe worked undercover in narcotics. That means Joe interacted with major drug dealers, drug cartels, criminal organizations. These groups often have connections to intelligence agencies. The CIA has a long history of involvement in drug trafficking. It's documented, real, not conspiracy theory. What if Joe's investigation touched on CIA operations? What if Bobby Briggs, the dealer who shot Joe, had CIA connections? What if Joe discovered that the drugs he was investigating were actually part of a CIA operation? Money laundering? Weapons deals? Black ops funding? That kind of information would make Joe extremely dangerous. The CIA couldn't just kill him. Joe's a cop, a disabled war hero in the sense of being wounded in the line of duty. Killing him would raise too many questions, too much attention, too much investigation. But monitoring him, that they can do. They can watch him forever, make sure he never talks, make sure he never reveals what he knows. And if he tries, they have Susie. They have their spy. They can act immediately. Joe probably doesn't even remember all the details. The trauma of being shot, the pain, the medications, the surgeries. His memory of those days might be fuzzy, but the CIA can't risk it. They can't take the chance that one day Joe remembers something, says something, writes something down. So they watch, through a baby, Through Joe's own daughter. Through a CIA director named Avery Bullock, who controls a small avatar body and lives in Joe's house and listens to every word Joe says. The families never notice. What's amazing is that nobody in Quahog notices anything wrong. Peter visits the Swansons all the time. He sees Susie, he holds her, he talks around her, he never suspects anything. But Peter is an idiot. Peter wouldn't notice if Susie was replaced by a robot chicken. Ironically, there actually is a robot chicken. Dr. Hartman created it. But that's another story. Bonnie doesn't notice. She's Susie's mother. She should notice if something is wrong with her baby. But maybe she's too stressed, too overwhelmed, too focused on dealing with Joe's disability and Kevin's problems. Or maybe the avatar is that good, that realistic, that convincing. Even Brian doesn't notice. Brian is smart. Brian is observant. Brian would normally spot something suspicious, but he's too busy being an alcoholic writer to pay attention to babies. The only person who might notice is Stewie. Stewie is a genius. Stewie understands advanced technology. Stewie has built his own robots and time machines. Stewie should be able to detect if another baby in the neighborhood isn't real. But here's the thing. Stewie is in love with Susie. He sings to her. He writes poems about her. He's obsessed with her. And love is blind. Stewie's feelings for Susie make him unable to see the truth. He doesn't want to see it. He wants Susie to be real, so he ignores any evidence that she might not be. Or maybe Stewie does know. Maybe he figured it out, but he doesn't say anything because he's a baby too. Who would believe him? Who would listen? And maybe Stewie respects the craft, the technology, the CIA's audacity to put a fake baby in Quahog and get away with it. Maybe Stewie appreciates the brilliance of it. The episodes where Bullock speaks. Let's look closer at the episodes where we hear Susie's inner voice, where Patrick Stewart speaks, where Bullock reveals himself. The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair is about Stewie falling in love with Susie. Stewie starts babysitting her, spending time with her. This would worry the CIA. What if Stewie's genius lets him detect the truth? What if Stewie builds technology that scans Susie and discovers she's artificial? Bullock needs to monitor this situation closely. So, he speaks. He makes his presence known. He watches Stewie carefully. Thanksgiving is about Kevin returning home from the military. Kevin is Joe's son. Kevin was reported MIA in Iraq. Now he's back. This is huge for Joe. Emotional. Important. The CIA would absolutely want to monitor this. What does Kevin know? What did he see in Iraq? What secrets does he bring home? Bullock needs to be there, listening, recording, making sure Kevin doesn't say anything dangerous. Internal Affairs is about Joe and Bonnie's marriage problems. They fight, they argue, they reveal private things, things about Joe's past, things about their relationship, things that the CIA wants to know. Personal information is useful. It can be used as leverage, as blackmail, as control. Bullock collects it all. Joe's revenge is the big one. This is when Joe reveals the truth about how he got paralyzed, the real story, Bobby Briggs, the undercover operation, the shooting. This is exactly what the CIA has been waiting for, what they've been worried about. Joe is finally talking about his past, about what happened. Bullock needs to hear every word, needs to make sure Joe doesn't reveal too much, needs to decide if Joe is becoming too dangerous to let live. These aren't random episodes. These are key moments in Joe's life. Moments when secrets might be revealed. Moments when the CIA needs eyes and ears on the ground. Moments when Bullock activates fully and thinks out loud, and we hear his voice through Susie's mouth. The technology makes sense. Some people might say, this is too crazy. The CIA wouldn't actually do this. But remember, in the American Dad, Family Guy universe, the CIA has done much crazier things. They've transplanted human brains into animal bodies. That's canon. Klaus is a German Olympic skier trapped in a fish body. Brian might be a human trapped in a dog body. The CIA does brain transplants. They've created genetic mutants. Dr. Hartman created the giant chicken by accident. Imagine what the CIA could create on purpose. They've developed advanced robotics, avatar bodies that look completely human, that feel real, that eat and sleep and function like real people. They've experimented on civilians, on children, on families. American Dad shows this constantly. The CIA in this universe has no ethics, no morals, no limits. They do whatever they want, whenever they want. So, yes, the CIA would absolutely create a fake baby to spy on a former undercover cop. Yes, they would put that baby in his house. Yes, they would have their director control it remotely. Because that's who they are in this universe. That's what they do. The truth we're not supposed to see. This theory explains everything. It explains why Susie has Patrick Stewart's voice. It explains why the same actor voices both Bullock and Susie. It explains why Susie never ages. It explains why Susie appears right when Avatar technology becomes canon in American Dad. It explains why we only hear her thoughts in episodes about Joe specifically. It's all there. The evidence, the connections, the timeline, the logic. It all fits together perfectly. Susie Swanson isn't real. She's a CIA avatar, controlled remotely by director Avery Bullock, planted in Joe Swanson's house to monitor him, to watch him, to make sure he never reveals what he knows about his undercover days. Every time we hear Susie's thoughts, we're hearing Bullock, the real Bullock, sitting in his CIA office, controlling a fake baby body, watching Joe eat dinner, watching Joe watch TV, watching Joe sleep, collecting information, filing reports, maintaining surveillance. And nobody in Quahog knows. Nobody suspects. Joe lives his life thinking he has a normal daughter. Bonnie thinks she gave birth to a real baby. Stewie thinks he's in love with a real girl. Peter thinks he has a real baby neighbor. But it's all fake. All of it. Susie Swanson is CIA Director Avery Bullock. And Patrick Stewart's voice is the proof, the confession, the truth hiding in plain sight. The question is, will Joe ever find out? Will he ever discover that his daughter is a spy? Will he ever realize that the CIA never stopped watching him after all these years? Or will Bullock keep his secret forever? Will he control Susie for the rest of Joe's life? Will Joe die never knowing that his baby girl was actually a 60-year-old CIA director the entire time? In Quahog, anything is possible. In the McFarlane universe, no secret is too crazy, no conspiracy is too wild, and sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. Susie Swanson is Avery Bullock, and her voice gives it all away. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Stewie's time machine broke reality. Stewie's time machine broke reality. That's why continuity makes no sense. The continuity problem everyone notices. Family Guy has a reputation. Ask anyone about the show and they'll tell you the same thing. Nothing matters. Characters forget major events between episodes. People die and come back. Meg has 3 different proms. Brian has 5 different first meetings with Stewie. Quagmire's age changes by decades depending on the season. The entire Griffin family experiences Christmas at least 40 times without aging a single day. Most people think this happens because Seth MacFarlane and the writers simply do not care about continuity. They assume the show operates on cartoon logic. That Family Guy exists in a consequence-free void where stories reset every week because that makes writing easier. Where nothing has to connect because animation allows infinite do-overs. But here's the thing, Family Guy does care about continuity. Sometimes. The show references past episodes constantly. Characters remember specific events from seasons ago. Running gags build on previous running gags. Herbert still remembers Chris from the pilot. Cleveland still references his years living next door even after he moved to Virginia and came back. The show has a memory. An inconsistent memory, sure, but a memory nonetheless. So why does everything else fall apart? Why can the show remember a throwaway joke from season 2, but forget that Meg graduated high school? Why does Peter remember that time he fought the chicken, but not that time Chris joined the military? Why does the timeline collapse and rebuild itself every few episodes like a drunk person trying to fold a fitted sheet? Stewie Griffin broke the timeline. The answer is Stewie Griffin. Specifically, his time machine. More specifically, the fact that Stewie has traveled through time so many times that he broke reality itself. Every jump created a fracture. Every trip back shattered the timeline a little more. Every attempt to fix things made them exponentially worse. Stewie didn't just bend time, he snapped it in half. Then he snapped the halves into quarters. Then he threw the quarters into a blender and hit puree. Back to the Pilot changed everything. Let's start with the evidence. Back to the Pilot, the episode where Stewie and Brian travel back to the very first episode of Family Guy. They arrive in 1999. They interact with their past selves. They change events. They prevent things from happening that originally happened. Then they try to fix those changes. Then they try to fix the fixes. By the end of the episode, Stewie and Brian have altered the timeline so many times that Brian literally has a different personality when they get back to the present. And that change sticks, sort of. Brian becomes more pretentious after this episode, more insufferable, more willing to lecture everyone about politics and art and literature. The Brian who returns from Back to the Pilot is noticeably different from the Brian who existed before. The time travel changed him, permanently, or temporarily. Or maybe both, depending on which episode you watch, because the timeline is now fractured, and Brian exists in multiple states simultaneously, like Schrödinger's pretentious dog. But Brian's personality shift is just the beginning. The real damage happens to the fabric of reality itself. When Stewie and Brian jump back to 1999, they create a paradox. They exist in a timeline where they already existed. They interact with versions of themselves that are living through events they already lived through. They change those events. Then they return to a present that has been altered by those changes. Except the present hasn't been altered, not completely. Some things changed, some things didn't. Some things changed and then changed back. The timeline splintered. Meet the Quagmires made it worse. Now add Meet the Quagmires, the episode where Death shows up at Peter's door and Peter asks to relive 1984. Death says, sure, why not, and sends Peter back to the 80s. Peter immediately ruins everything. He prevents himself from meeting Lois. He causes Lois to date Quagmire instead. He creates an alternate 2007 where Lois married Quagmire and Peter works at a fishing company and Roger from American Dad lives in the attic instead of an alien, because apparently the multiverse extends beyond Family Guy and into the entire McFarlane animated universe, which is its own horrifying can of worms we'll open later. Peter eventually fixes this timeline. He goes back again. He makes sure he meets Lois. He restores the original 2007. Everyone forgets the alternate timeline happened, except they don't really forget because the episode exists. The alternate timeline exists. Roger in the attic exists somewhere in the multiverse. That version of Quahog is still out there. Still real. Still running parallel to the main timeline. And here's where things get messy. How did Peter time travel? Death sent him back. Death, the literal personification of mortality. Death has time travel powers in the Family Guy universe. Death can rewrite history. Death can create alternate timelines. Death can splinter reality just as easily as Stewie can, and Death did splinter reality. He sent Peter back. Peter changed things. Peter created a branch. Peter pruned that branch. But the pruning didn't erase the branch. It just made the branch invisible. The alternate 2007 still exists. It exists in superposition with the main 2007. Both timelines are real. Both timelines are canon. Both timelines are happening simultaneously. The multiverse is already confirmed. Now here's where it gets really wild. Family Guy has explicitly confirmed the existence of the multiverse. Multiple times. Road to the Multiverse, the episode where Stewie and Brian jump between parallel universes. They visit a universe where everyone is Disney characters. A universe where everyone is drawn by Robert Crumb. A universe where dogs rule and humans are pets. A universe where everyone has two heads. A universe where Christianity never existed. A universe where Japan won World War II. These aren't hypothetical universes. They're real. Stewie built a remote control that allows him to physically travel between them. He proves that infinite parallel realities exist. He proves that every decision creates a branch. He proves that the multiverse is not theoretical. It's tangible. It's accessible. It's right there. One click away. So, if the multiverse exists, and if Stewie can access it, and if Stewie has time traveled multiple times, and if Peter has also time traveled with Death's help, and if those time travels created branches and alterations and paradoxes, then what we're watching isn't one continuous Family Guy timeline. It's dozens of Family Guy timelines, hundreds maybe, all bleeding into each other, all overlapping, all competing for dominance. Why nobody ages in Quahog? This explains everything. Why does nobody age? Because each timeline exists in its own temporal bubble. The Griffins can experience 40 Christmases because each Christmas happens in a slightly different timeline. Time isn't moving forward linearly. Time is moving forward fractally. The family experiences multiple versions of the same year across multiple branches of reality. From their perspective, they're living through 2005 over and over again. From our perspective, we're watching 20 years of television. But both perspectives are correct because time operates differently in a fractured multiverse. Why do characters forget major events? Because those events happened in different timeline branches. Peter remembers fighting the chicken because that happened in timeline A. Peter doesn't remember Chris joining the military because that happened in timeline B. Both events are canon, both events are real, but they didn't happen to the same Peter. They happened to different versions of Peter existing in different branches of the shattered reality that Stewie created when he first turned on that time machine. Why do backstories change? Because different timelines have different histories. In one timeline, Quagmire is 60 years old. In another timeline, he's 40. In another timeline, he served in Vietnam. In another timeline, Vietnam never happened because Stewie's time traveling created a ripple effect that altered global history. All of these backstories are simultaneously true because they're all happening in parallel realities that occasionally intersect and overwrite each other. The evidence is in the animation itself. The show even gives us visual evidence of this fracturing. Notice how the animation style changes between seasons? Early Family Guy looks different from modern Family Guy. The characters look slightly different. Peter's chin is shaped differently. Meg's hat color changes. Brian's nose changes shape. Stewie's head proportions shift. Most people assume this happens because the animation team improved over time, better technology, better artists, natural evolution of the art style. But what if that's wrong? What if the animation changes because we're watching different versions of the characters from different timeline branches? What if early Peter and modern Peter are literally different Peters from different realities, and the visual differences reflect that ontological separation? It sounds insane, but it's less insane than assuming the show just forgot what color Meg's hat was. It's less insane than assuming 20 years passed in real life, while 0 years passed in Quahog. It's less insane than trying to rationalize how Peter can be 40 years old in Season 3 and also 40 years old in Season 20, despite the show explicitly stating that time passes between episodes. Every episode is its own timeline. Here's the theory in full. Family Guy doesn't take place in one continuous timeline. It takes place in a multiverse of timelines that Stewie shattered through repeated time travel. Every episode exists in its own branch. Sometimes branches converge and we get continuity. Sometimes branches diverge and we get contradictions. The show isn't ignoring continuity. The show is depicting the natural result of a broken timeline where cause and effect have become optional and reality itself has become negotiable. Stewie broke time. He broke it in Back to the Pilot. He broke it again in every subsequent time travel episode. He broke it when he built the multiverse remote. He broke it when he time traveled to prevent his own death. He broke it when he met his future self. Every temporal manipulation created another fracture, another branch, another parallel Quahog existing just slightly offset from the main Quahog. And the fractures keep spreading, like cracks in glass. One leads to another, until the entire windshield is spider-webbed with breaks and you can't see through it anymore. That's Quahog. That's the Family Guy universe, a spider-webbed reality where nothing is solid anymore, where everything exists in flux, where the past can change because the past isn't fixed, where the future is uncertain because there are infinite futures, where the present is whatever the writers need it to be, because the present exists in superposition across countless timeline branches. The characters are trapped in the loop, and nobody notices. Peter doesn't notice that he's living through 2005 for the 15th time. Lois doesn't notice that Meg graduated high school 3 times. Chris doesn't notice that he's been 14 years old for 2 decades. They're trapped in the loop, trapped in the fractured timeline, trapped reliving the same moments across different branches without any awareness that they're doing it. Only Stewie knows. He has to know. He's the one who caused it. He built the time machine. He pushed the button. He shattered reality. And now he's living with the consequences. Watching his family loop through the same experiences over and over. Watching Quahog reset and reboot and reload like a video game stuck in an endless new game plus cycle. Watching time eat itself. Maybe that's why Stewie stopped time traveling. After Back to the Pilot, he uses the time machine less frequently. Maybe he realized what he did. Maybe he understood that every jump makes things worse. Maybe he's trying to let the timeline heal by staying put in one branch and hoping the fractures don't spread further. Or maybe he's still jumping. Maybe every episode where something feels off is actually Stewie jumping again, making small alterations, trying to fix the mess he made, trying to restore one true timeline from the chaos of infinite timelines, failing every time, making things worse every time, creating more branches, more fractures, more splinters in reality. This explains the Road to episodes too. The Road to episodes make more sense now too. Stewie and Brian's adventures across various locations and scenarios aren't just random adventures. They're timeline jumps. Each Road to episode takes place in a slightly different branch where the rules are different and outcomes vary. Road to Rhode Island, Road to Europe, Road to Rupert. All of them are Stewie and Brian navigating the fractured multiverse that Stewie created. Sometimes they restore continuity, sometimes they break it further, but they're always jumping, always moving between branches, always trying to find their way back to something resembling a coherent reality. And this is why Brian dies and comes back. In Life of Brian, Brian gets hit by a car and dies. The family mourns. They get a new dog. Stewie eventually uses a working time machine to go back and prevent Brian's death. Brian returns. The family forgets he ever died. But here's the thing. Brian did die. In one timeline, Brian is dead. In another timeline, Brian is alive. Both timelines are real. We just happen to be watching the timeline where Stewie saved him. But dead Brian still exists somewhere in the multiverse, still buried in the backyard, still gone. Both outcomes are canon because both outcomes happened in different branches of the shattered reality. The floating timeline finally makes sense. This theory explains the floating timeline too. Family Guy exists in a perpetual present. The show premiered in 1999, but the characters reference current events from 2024. Peter makes jokes about modern politics. Stewie uses technology that didn't exist in 1999. The Griffins watch movies that came out last year. How is this possible if no time has passed in Quahog? Because time has passed. In the real world, outside the fractures, but inside the multiverse that Stewie created, time behaves differently. The timeline updates itself to match whatever year we're currently watching in. The branches automatically adjust to incorporate new cultural references and modern technology. It's not that the Griffins are living in 1999 with smartphones. It's that they're living in all years simultaneously across multiple branches, and the show depicts whichever branch is most relevant to current audiences. Think of it like this. Stewie's time machine didn't just break the past and future, it broke the present too. It made now into a flexible concept. Made today into something that can be 1999 or 2007 or 2024, depending on which timeline branch you're observing. The Griffins exist in quantum superposition across all possible present moments, and the show simply depicts whichever present moment is most convenient for the story being told. Quahog exists outside normal time. This is why Quahog feels timeless, why it never changes, why the same stores exist on the same streets year after year, why the Drunken Clam looks identical in 1999 and 2024. Because Quahog doesn't exist in linear time anymore. It exists in Stewie time, in fractured time, in broken time. The town is frozen in a temporal loop created by repeated time travel interference. And the loop keeps keeps resetting, keeps pulling Quahog back to its default state, keeps preventing real change from taking root. The only things that change are the things that don't matter. Cutaway gags can be different. One-off characters can appear and disappear. Background details can shift, but the core elements stay locked. Peter stays at the brewery. Quagmire stays next door. The family stays in the same house. The same bars and restaurants and landmarks persist forever. Because these are the fixed points in the fractured timeline, the anchors that prevent total collapse, the constants that exist across all branches. If these fixed points changed, the entire multiverse would destabilize. The branches would diverge too far. The timelines would lose coherence. Quahog would cease to exist as a recognizable location and instead become a formless void of infinite possibilities, where anything could be anything and nothing would mean anything. Stewie's time machine broke reality, but it didn't destroy reality completely. It just fractured it, made it flexible, made it contradictory, made it impossible to track but possible to observe. And now we're all living with the consequences, watching a show that takes place in every timeline and no timeline simultaneously, watching characters who remember everything and nothing, watching a town that exists forever in the perpetual present of a shattered universe. The continuity errors aren't errors, they're features, evidence of the fractures, proof that Stewie Griffin broke time itself and nobody can fix it, not even him. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Glenn Quagmire is related to Stan Smith from American Dad. Glenn Quagmire is related to Stan Smith, the CIA bloodline theory, the chin that launched 1,000 questions. Glenn Quagmire and Stan Smith look the same, not similar, not kind of alike, the same chin, same hairline, same facial structure, same voice, same build, same mannerisms. Put them side by side, and you're looking at cousins at minimum. Brothers, maybe. Possibly the same person living in parallel universes. The resemblance is so obvious that ignoring it feels like ignoring an elephant doing backflips in your living room while screaming the national anthem. Both characters exist in Seth MacFarlane's animated universe. Both shows air on the same network. Both characters are voiced by the same actor. Patrick Warburton voices Joe Swanson, but stay with me. Both shows reference each other occasionally. The universes are connected. We know this. Roger from American Dad appears in Family Guy during Meet the Quagmires. The crossover is canon. The multiverse is confirmed, so if the universes overlap, why couldn't the characters share DNA? Here's the theory. Glenn Quagmire and Stan Smith are cousins, both descended from the same CIA bloodline, both products of a government program that breeds agents for specific traits, both trained from birth to serve American interests through whatever means necessary, both broken by their service, both hiding in plain sight. Stan hides by being obvious, working at the CIA, living in Langley Falls, making his government employment his entire personality. Quagmire hides by being invisible, playing the perverted neighbor, the sex-obsessed pilot. The comic relief character nobody takes seriously, but underneath the giggity-giggity exterior lives a trained operative with skills that no civilian airline pilot should possess. Both men are ex-military with government ties. Let's start with what we know for certain. Stan Smith works for the CIA. No question, no debate. His entire character revolves around being a CIA agent. He carries a gun. He has security clearance. He goes on classified missions. He kills people for the government. He's a patriot to the point of psychosis. His loyalty to America overrides his loyalty to his family, his friends, his own safety. Stan is the CIA. The CIA is Stan. They're inseparable. Glenn Quagmire is a commercial airline pilot. That's his job. That's what we're told. He flies planes for money. Perfectly normal career. Nothing suspicious about it. Except Quagmire has military experience. Multiple references throughout Family Guy confirm this. He served in the Navy. He flew combat missions. He has medals. He has training. He has skills that extend far beyond flying passenger jets from Quahog to wherever passenger jets from Quahog fly to. In Patriot games, Quagmire appears in a Navy uniform. In Airport 07, he demonstrates expert combat flying while drunk, which is horrifying for different reasons, but proves his skill level. In Quagmire's Dad, we learn his father was also military, also a pilot, also serving the country. The Quagmire family has a military tradition, generation after generation of service. And not just regular military service, specialized service, pilot service, intelligence service. The kind of service that requires security clearances and psychological evaluations, and a willingness to do things that normal people find unthinkable. Stan Smith has the same background, CIA agent, former military, father figure who probably also worked for the government. The show never confirms this, but come on, where else would Stan get his paranoid patriotic fervor? The Smith family also has a tradition of service, a bloodline of agents, a genetic predisposition toward following orders and killing enemies, and wrapping yourself in the flag while committing morally questionable acts in the name of national security. The physical evidence is overwhelming. Now look at them. Really look at them. The chin. Both Quagmire and Stan have that distinctive, jutting chin. The Kirk Douglas chin. The Jay Leno chin. The chin that suggests generations of strong jaw genetics. The chin that makes you wonder if their family tree includes Easter Island heads. It's not a common chin, it's a very specific chin. And they both have it. The hairline. Both characters have the same receding hairline pattern, same widow's peak, same forehead, same skull shape. You could swap their hair and nobody would notice. You could put Stan's hair on Quagmire's head and he'd still look like Quagmire. You could put Quagmire's hair on Stan's head and he'd still look like Stan. Because the underlying structure is identical. The bone structure, the facial architecture, the genetic foundation, the build. Both men are the same height, same body type, same proportions. Neither is particularly tall or short. Neither is particularly muscular or thin. They're both average-sized men with above-average chins. They both carry themselves with military posture, shoulders back, chest out. The walk of men who spent years being told to stand at attention and never quite shook the habit. The voice. Okay, this is where it gets tricky, because different actors voice these characters. Seth MacFarlane voices Quagmire, the giggity voice, the perverted neighbor voice. Stan Smith is voiced by Seth MacFarlane as well, the authoritative CIA agent voice. But listen to them. Really listen. Strip away the character affectations, the giggity, the patriotic slogans. Underneath, the voices have the same cadence, the same rhythm, the same DNA, because they're both Seth MacFarlane doing slightly different versions of the same basic voice. And maybe that's just because one actor voices multiple characters, or maybe it's because these characters are supposed to sound related, supposed to share vocal genetics, supposed to make you wonder if they came from the same family tree. Quagmire's suspicious wealth and skills. Here's where things get interesting. Quagmire is a pilot, commercial airline pilot. That's a decent job, good salary, union benefits, retirement plan. But it doesn't explain Quagmire's lifestyle. The man owns a house in Quahog, a nice house, a house with multiple rooms and a yard and probably a mortgage that costs more per month than most pilots make. He also has money for constant entertainment, bars, restaurants, dating. His entire life revolves around spending money on fleeting pleasures, and he never seems to run out of cash. Where does the money come from? Airline pilots make good money, but they don't make endless money. They don't make go out drinking 7 nights a week and never worry about bills money. Especially not in the economy that Quahog supposedly exists in. Peter Griffin constantly struggles financially despite working at a brewery. Cleveland needed to move to Virginia for work. Joe Swanson lives on a cop's salary, but Quagmire has money, lots of money, suspicious amounts of money. The kind of money that makes you wonder if he has a second income source that he never mentions. And his skills. Quagmire can fly anything, commercial jets, military planes, helicopters. In multiple episodes, he demonstrates piloting abilities that exceed normal commercial aviation. He performs combat maneuvers. He flies while intoxicated and still manages to land safely. Again, horrifying but impressive. He has knowledge of military aircraft that civilian pilots shouldn't have. He talks about planes the way mechanics talk about cars, with intimate knowledge, with hands-on experience, with the familiarity of someone who spent years doing more than just flying passengers from point A to point B. He also has weapons training. In Whistle While Your Wife Works, Quagmire demonstrates expert marksmanship. In Quagmire's Baby, he handles guns with professional competence. In various episodes, he references knowing how to kill people efficiently, how to dispose of bodies, how to avoid leaving evidence. These aren't skills that commercial pilots learn in flight school. These are skills that military pilots learn, that intelligence operatives learn, that people with government training and government connections learn because the government taught them specifically for government purposes. Stan Smith has the same skill set. Now look at Stan Smith, CIA agent, expert marksman, hand-to-hand combat specialist, weapons expert, trained in multiple forms of killing, trained in interrogation, trained in torture, trained in psychological manipulation, trained in covert operations. Stan has every skill that Quagmire has, plus official government employment to explain where he learned them. But here's the thing, Stan is also bad at his job sometimes. He gets caught, he fails missions, he makes mistakes. He's a competent agent, but not a superhuman one. He's beatable, he's fallible, he's human. The CIA keeps him employed despite his flaws because he's loyal, because he follows orders, because he believes in the mission completely. But the CIA also has better agents, smarter agents, more skilled agents, agents who don't fail, agents who don't get caught, agents who operate in deep cover and nobody even knows they exist. Agents like Glenn Quagmire. What if Quagmire was one of those better agents? What if Quagmire was the kind of operative the CIA doesn't acknowledge publicly? What if his pilot job is cover? What if his entire perverted persona is cover? What if everything we see Quagmire do is carefully calculated misdirection designed to make him seem harmless and stupid and unworthy of investigation? Nobody suspects the sex-obsessed neighbor of being a CIA operative. Nobody thinks the man who says giggity 50 times per episode could be a trained killer. That's what makes it perfect cover. That's what makes it genius. The hypersexual behavior as trauma response. Let's talk about Quagmire's sexuality. The man is obsessed with sex, constantly, relentlessly. His entire personality revolves around pursuing sexual encounters. He hits on every woman he sees. He makes inappropriate comments constantly. He keeps detailed records of his conquests. He has entire rooms in his house dedicated to sexual activities. He's a sex addict, a predator, a character who would be horrifying if he existed in real life, but gets played for laughs because this is an animated sitcom where nothing has consequences. But what if the hypersexuality is a trauma response? What if Quagmire's sexual obsession stems from psychological damage caused by his military service? PTSD doesn't always present as flashbacks and nightmares. Sometimes it presents as compulsive behavior, addiction, seeking constant stimulation to avoid thinking about traumatic memories, using sex as a coping mechanism the same way other people use alcohol or drugs or gambling. Quagmire's behavior could be his brain's way of processing trauma he can't consciously acknowledge. Trauma from classified missions, trauma from combat, trauma from things he did in service to his country that he can never talk about because they're classified and terrible and would destroy him if he faced them directly. Stan Smith has trauma too. Stan kills people regularly for the CIA. Stan has probably tortured people. Stan has definitely done morally horrific things in the name of national security. And how does Stan cope? By doubling down on patriotism, by convincing himself that everything he does is justified because America is perfect and the CIA is righteous, and following orders absolves him of responsibility. Stan's coping mechanism is ideology, belief, faith in the system. He wraps himself in the flag to avoid looking at the blood on his hands. Quagmire's coping mechanism is sex, pleasure, distraction. He buries himself in physical sensation to avoid emotional processing. Both men are running from the same thing, guilt, trauma. The psychological cost of serving the government. They just run in different directions. Stan runs toward authority. Quagmire runs toward oblivion. Both are broken. Both are damaged. Both are products of a system that trains men to kill and then offers no support when those men crack under the weight of what they've done. The witness protection theory. Here's the darkest version of this theory. What if Quagmire is in witness protection? What if his entire identity is fake? What if Glenn Quagmire isn't even his real name? What if he was a CIA operative who saw something he shouldn't have seen, or knew something he shouldn't have known, or threatened to expose something that the CIA couldn't allow to be exposed? What if the CIA didn't kill him but couldn't trust him either? What if they gave him a new identity, a new life, a new cover story, and planted him in Quahog where they could monitor him forever? That would explain everything. The money, the skills, the government connections, the suspicious knowledge, the sense that Quagmire is playing a character rather than being a character. He's not a real person, he's a constructed identity, a mask, a role he plays every day to stay alive, and the CIA watches him, monitors him, makes sure he doesn't slip up, makes sure he doesn't reveal what he knows. Maybe Stan Smith is his handler. Maybe Stan checks in on Quagmire periodically. Maybe that's why the universes overlap. Because Stan's universe and Quagmire's universe are connected through CIA operations, through classified programs, through the same shadow government apparatus that runs both shows behind the scenes. The witness protection theory also explains why Quagmire never has consequences. He commits crimes constantly, sexual harassment at minimum, probably sexual assault given some of the implications in various episodes. Definitely multiple consent violations, but he never gets arrested, never faces legal trouble, never even gets sued. Why? Because he's protected, because the CIA protects him. Because putting Quagmire on trial would risk exposure, would risk him talking, would risk him revealing classified information in open court. So the CIA makes problems disappear, makes complaints vanish, makes sure Glenn Quagmire can do whatever Glenn Quagmire wants without facing consequences, because the alternative is worse. Stan Smith has the same immunity. Stan commits crimes all the time: murder, torture, kidnapping, illegal surveillance, constitutional violations, and he never faces justice either. Because the CIA protects its own. Because the agency covers for agents who know too much. Because once you're inside the system takes care of you. Even if taking care of you means enabling your worst behavior, even if it means letting you become a monster, because monsters are useful, and the CIA specializes in creating useful monsters. The bloodline connection. So how are they related? Cousins makes the most sense. Quagmire's father and Stan's father could be brothers, both raised in the same government-adjacent family, both taught from childhood that serving America means serving the intelligence community, both trained in the same skills, both indoctrinated with the same values. Then they have sons, Glenn and Stan, the next generation, also trained, also indoctrinated, also broken by their service. But maybe it goes deeper. Maybe the Quagmire-Smith bloodline isn't random. Maybe the CIA has been breeding agents for generations, selecting for specific traits, physical traits like the chin, psychological traits like loyalty and aggression, and the ability to compartmentalize morality. Maybe Glenn and Stan are products of a eugenics program that nobody knows about. A classified project to create the perfect operatives, soldiers who follow orders without question, agents who kill without hesitation, patriots who sacrifice everything for America. That sounds insane. But this is the same universe where Roger the alien lives in Stan's attic, and Stewie Griffin built a time machine in his bedroom, and Brian is a talking dog who writes novels. Insane is baseline. Insane is normal. A CIA breeding program to create superhuman agents? That's practically realistic compared to the other stuff happening in these shows. And if the breeding program exists, it explains why Quagmire and Stan look alike, why they have similar skills, why they both serve the government despite the psychological cost, because they're designed to, because their genetics predispose them toward it, because they're the product of generations of selective breeding aimed at creating the perfect American operative. Loyal, skilled, ruthless, broken. Exactly what the CIA needs. The cover-up. The CIA doesn't want people making this connection, doesn't want people looking at Quagmire and Stan and asking questions, so they hide the relationship, they keep the shows separate. They minimize crossovers. They make sure fans think of Family Guy and American Dad as distinct universes with no meaningful overlap. But the evidence is there. The chin, the voice, the skills, the government connections, the trauma, the patterns. It's all there if you look. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the CIA lets the evidence exist because hiding it completely would be more suspicious. Better to hide in plain sight. Better to let conspiracy theorists point out the similarities and get dismissed as crazy. Better to let the truth masquerade as fan theory, because if the truth sounds ridiculous enough, nobody takes it seriously. Nobody investigates. Nobody asks uncomfortable questions. Glenn Quagmire and Stan Smith being cousins? That's just a fun internet theory. That's just fans connecting dots that don't exist. That's just people reading too much into animation. Except it's not. The dots are real. The connections are real. The bloodline is real. Glenn Quagmire is related to Stan Smith. Both are products of the same CIA breeding program. Both are broken agents hiding behind constructed personas. Both are serving the same masters. And both will deny it until the day they die, because admitting it would expose the entire operation, would reveal the truth, would prove that the American intelligence community has been manipulating animated television to hide its genetic experiments in plain sight. The chin doesn't lie. The skills don't lie. The pattern doesn't lie. Quagmire and Smith, cousins, operatives, products of the same bloodline, the same program, the same broken system that creates monsters and calls them patriots. Giggity giggity. God bless America. Same difference. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Cleveland left because he discovered the truth about Quahog. Cleveland left because he discovered the truth about Quahog. The exit that made no sense. Cleveland Brown left Quahog in 2009, just packed up and moved to Virginia, took his son, said goodbye to his best friends, left the house he lived in for years, left the neighborhood where he spent decades, left everything familiar and comfortable and stable to start over in a new state with new people and a new life. The show told us he left because his house fell down thanks to Peter's stupid antics, and he reconnected with an old high school girlfriend who lived in Stool Bend, Virginia. Simple explanation. Clean motivation. Perfectly logical reason for a major character to exit the show. Except it made no sense. None. Zero. Cleveland had lived next door to Peter for years. His house had been destroyed by Peter multiple times before. Remember when Peter crashed a plane into it? Remember when Peter drove a tank through it? Remember all the times Peter caused property damage that should have made Cleveland move years earlier? Cleveland never left before. He rebuilt. He stayed. He put up with Peter because that's what Cleveland did. He tolerated chaos. He remained calm. He was the patient one, the reasonable one, the friend who stuck around no matter how bad things got. So, why did he suddenly leave? Why did one more house destruction finally push him over the edge when dozens of previous destructions failed to? Why did he move states instead of just moving to a different house in Quahog? Why did he cut ties with his entire friend group instead of staying close? Why did the show frame his departure as permanent and final when nothing in his character suggested he would make such a drastic decision? The official answer is simple. Cleveland was getting his own show, The Cleveland Show, a spin-off. Fox wanted to expand the Seth MacFarlane animated universe, and Cleveland was chosen as the lead character. So the writers wrote him out of Family Guy and into his new series. Business decision, corporate synergy. Nothing mysterious about it. But what if that's the cover story? What if Cleveland left because he discovered something? What if he learned the truth about Quahog and ran? What if his departure was not about a destroyed house or a high school girlfriend, but about escaping something terrible? Something he couldn't tell Peter or Joe or Quagmire about because telling them would put them in danger? Or worse, because he knew they wouldn't believe him? The discovery. Think about Cleveland's position in the group. Peter is the idiot, the chaos agent, the man who causes problems without thinking about consequences. Quagmire is the predator, the sex addict, the man hiding behind a perverted persona. Joe is the cop, the disabled veteran, the man with government training and possible government connections. And Cleveland is the observer, the calm one, the voice of reason, the man who watches everything happen and provides commentary. Cleveland sees things the others miss because he's not distracted by his own chaos. Cleveland had decades to observe Quahog, to notice patterns, to ask questions. Why do the same holidays repeat endlessly? Why do people keep having the same birthdays without aging? Why do major events get forgotten between episodes? Why does the town reset itself constantly? Why do people die and come back? Why do contradictory backstories coexist? Cleveland is smart enough to notice these things, patient enough to track them, analytical enough to realize something is wrong. And eventually, he figured it out. Quahog is not real. Either it's a simulation, or it's purgatory, or it's some other form of artificial, constructed reality where the normal rules of time and space and causality do not apply. The people are not real people. The events are not real events. Everything is manufactured. Everything is fake. Everything is designed to loop forever without progression or growth or escape. How did Cleveland discover this? Maybe he found a glitch, a crack in the simulation, something that revealed the code underneath. Maybe he noticed that certain events repeat with mathematical precision. Maybe he tracked the timeline and realized that 20 years passed in the real world while 0 years passed in Quahog. Maybe he confronted someone who knew the truth and they confirmed his suspicions instead of denying them. Maybe he simply thought about his own life long enough and hard enough until the only logical conclusion was that his life is not real. The simulation theory. If Quahog is a simulation, then everyone inside it is either an artificial intelligence or a consciousness trapped inside a computer program. The town exists inside a machine. The physics are programmed. The people are code. The events are scripted. Everything that happens in Quahog happens because someone or something outside Quahog made it happen. The residents have no free will, no agency, no control over their own lives. They're puppets, characters, NPCs in someone else's game. This explains everything. The continuity errors are programming bugs. The timeline chaos is intentional design to keep the characters trapped in the same period forever. The lack of aging is a setting. The resurrection of dead characters is reloading a save file. The town is not a real place. It's a digital construct. And Cleveland figured this out, realized he was living inside a computer, realized his entire existence was fake. So he tried to escape. He thought that leaving Quahog might let him break free from the simulation, that moving to a different location might take him outside the programmed boundaries, that starting fresh in Virginia might give him access to a reality that operates on normal rules. He packed up. He said goodbye. He left Quahog behind. He went to Stoolbend. And for 4 seasons of the Cleveland show, he tried to build a real life. A life with consequences. A life with progression. A life where time moved forward and events mattered, and things that happened. The purgatory theory. Or maybe Quahog is purgatory, a holding place for souls that cannot move on. Cleveland died at some point in the past. So did Peter, Lois, Joe, Quagmire, everyone. They all died and ended up in Quahog. This is their afterlife, their punishment or their test or their waiting room before final judgment. The town exists outside normal time because time has no meaning for the dead. The characters cannot age because they're already dead. The events repeat because purgatory is cyclical. You relive the same experiences over and over until you learn whatever lesson you're supposed to learn, or pay whatever debt you're supposed to pay, or achieve whatever redemption you're supposed to achieve. Cleveland realized this, understood that Quahog is not the living world, that everyone around him is dead and trapped, and repeating the same patterns endlessly without knowing it. And he tried to escape, tried to move on, tried to find a way out of purgatory by physically leaving the town. The Cleveland show was his attempt to reach heaven or reincarnation or whatever comes after purgatory. He thought that if he could just get far enough away from Quahog, he might break free from the cycle, might finally die for real, might finally move on to whatever awaits beyond the endless loop. The Cleveland show as escape attempt. The Cleveland show ran for 4 seasons, 88 episodes. 4 years of Cleveland living in Stoolbend instead of Quahog. 4 years of different characters and different stories and different settings. The show had its own continuity, its own timeline, its own rules. For 4 years, Cleveland existed outside the Family Guy universe. He built a new life. He He married Donna. He became a stepfather. He made new friends. He had new adventures. And the show felt different, slower, calmer, less chaotic than Family Guy. The Cleveland show had continuity. Characters aged, events had consequences, time moved forward. Things that happened in one episode affected future episodes. The show operated on normal sitcom logic instead of Family Guy's fractured timeline logic. It felt like a real place, like a real life. Like Cleveland had actually escaped. But he had not escaped. The Cleveland show was still a Seth MacFarlane production, still animated by the same studio, still airing on Fox, still part of the same extended universe. Cleveland thought he was free, but he was still inside the simulation, still inside purgatory, just in a different sector, a different zone, a different level. He had not escaped Quahog. He had simply moved to Quahog's neighboring cell in the prison. And eventually, the show got canceled. Not because Cleveland wanted to return, not because his story was complete, because Fox decided the Cleveland show was no longer profitable, because the ratings dropped, because the network made a business decision. Cleveland had no choice in the matter. He was forced back to Quahog, forced back into Family Guy, forced to return to the place he tried so hard to escape. The changed man who returned. When Cleveland returned to Quahog in 2013, he was different, quieter, less energetic, less enthusiastic. The Cleveland who came back was not the Cleveland who left. Something had changed. Something fundamental. The man who returned had the same voice and the same appearance and the same basic personality, but there was a hollowness to him, a resignation, an acceptance of something terrible that he could not explain. Before he left, Cleveland was optimistic. He believed in his friends despite their flaws. He participated in their stupid plans even when he knew those plans would fail. He laughed at Peter's jokes. He enjoyed his life in Quahog. He was happy, or at least content. He had complaints, but he also had hope. He thought things could get better. He thought tomorrow might be different from today. After he returned, that hope was gone. Cleveland still hangs out with Peter and Joe and Quagmire. He still sits in the booth at the Drunken Clam. He still participates in their adventures. But there's a distance now, a detachment, like he's going through the motions, playing his role, saying his lines, but not really there, not really present. Like he's watching himself from outside his own body and just letting it happen because fighting it requires energy he no longer has. The show acknowledged his return with one episode. He's black. Peter and the guys celebrate Cleveland coming home. They ask why he came back. Cleveland gives vague answers. The show plays it for comedy, makes jokes about the Cleveland show being canceled, makes meta-references to Fox's programming decisions, and then moves on. Cleveland is back. Everything is normal again. The group is complete again. Life in Quahog continues exactly as it did before Cleveland left. Except Cleveland knows better now. He knows leaving is pointless. He knows escape is impossible. He tried. He spent 4 years trying, and he failed. The simulation pulled him back. Purgatory reclaimed him. Whatever force controls Quahog decided that Cleveland belongs in Quahog, and Cleveland belongs in Quahog forever. So he stopped fighting, stopped resisting, stopped hoping for something different. He returned to his position in the group and accepted his fate. The evidence he knows. Watch Cleveland in episodes after his return. Really watch him. He makes comments sometimes. Weird comments, meta comments, comments that suggest he knows more than he should. In The Simpsons Guy, when the Griffins meet the Simpsons, Cleveland barely reacts. Like meeting characters from another animated universe is perfectly normal. Like the boundaries between shows mean nothing. Like he already knew that all of these universes are connected and artificial and meaningless. In He's Blah-Ack, Cleveland tells Peter that Stoolbend felt different. Peter asks what he means. Cleveland says he cannot explain it. He drops the subject, changes topics, refuses to elaborate. Why? What was different about Stoolbend? What did Cleveland experience there that he cannot or will not describe? What did he learn during those 4 years that made him realize returning to Quahog was inevitable? Cleveland also makes comments about time, about how holidays keep repeating, about how nobody ages, about how the same events happen over and over with slight variations. Other characters make these comments too sometimes, but they make them as jokes, as meta-humor, as the show acknowledging its own cartoon logic. But when Cleveland makes these comments, there's something different in his delivery, something knowing, like he's not joking, like he's stating facts, like he sees the pattern and understands what it means and lives in quiet horror of that understanding. He also becomes more protective of his friends, more patient with Peter's stupidity, more forgiving of Quagmire's perversion, more understanding of Joe's violence. Like he knows that his friends are trapped the same way he's trapped, like he pities them, like he wants to help them but knows he cannot because they're not ready to see what he sees. They're not ready to accept that their entire existence is artificial or cyclical or doomed, so he stays quiet, keeps the truth to himself, lets them continue believing that Quahog is real and their lives matter, and tomorrow might bring change. Why he cannot leave again. Cleveland tried to escape once. He failed. He knows that trying again will also fail. The simulation or purgatory or whatever Quahog actually is has rules. Those rules include Cleveland Brown living in Quahog. The system allowed him to leave temporarily, but eventually forced him back. If he tried to leave again, the same thing would happen, or worse. Maybe next time the system would punish him. Maybe next time it would erase him completely. Maybe next time it would let him leave, but trap him somewhere even worse than Quahog. Or maybe Cleveland realized during his time in Stoolbend that leaving Quahog changes nothing. That Stoolbend operates on the same rules. That everywhere in the Seth MacFarlane animated universe is part of the same prison. That there is no escape because there is nowhere to escape to. Every town is Quahog. Every character is trapped. Every reality is fake. Moving from one cell to another cell accomplishes nothing. The prison is infinite. The boundaries extend forever. There is no outside. There is only inside, and inside is all there will ever be. So, Cleveland stays. He sits in the booth at the Drunken Clam. He drinks his beer. He listens to Peter's stories. He laughs at the appropriate moments. He plays his role in the group dynamic. He goes home to his house. He talks to his son. He lives his life. A life that will repeat forever, without change or growth or escape. A life that means nothing because it's not real. A life that loops endlessly because that's what the system demands. And he knows all of this. He sees the prison. He understands the trap. He recognizes the futility. But he stays because leaving accomplishes nothing. Because fighting the system is pointless. Because accepting your fate is easier than resisting it forever. Cleveland discovered the truth about Quahog, and the truth broke him. Turned him into a man who still smiles but no longer means it, who still participates but no longer cares, who still exists but no longer lives. The others who might know. Cleveland is probably not the only one who knows. Other characters show signs of awareness. Brian makes meta comments constantly, references the show's format, acknowledges that he's a character in a television program, breaks the fourth wall regularly. Brian might know. Might have figured it out the same way Cleveland figured it out, but Brian copes differently. Brian makes jokes, uses humor as a shield, admits the truth in ways that make people think he's joking when he's actually confessing. Stewie definitely knows something. Stewie built a time machine. Stewie traveled to parallel universes. Stewie has seen beyond Quahog in ways that no other character has. If anyone understands that Quahog operates outside normal reality, it's Stewie. But Stewie is too young to process this information properly, too immature to grapple with existential horror. So he buries himself in his inventions and his schemes and his relationship with Brian and pretends that nothing is wrong. Pretends that building better weapons and better gadgets and better plans will somehow give him control over a reality that cannot be controlled. Peter might know too, deep down, somewhere underneath the stupidity and the selfishness and the complete lack of self-awareness. Peter might have moments of clarity where he realizes something is wrong, where he notices the patterns, where he asks himself why nothing ever changes. But those moments pass quickly. Peter's mind protects him by forgetting, by resetting, by maintaining his ignorance. Peter survives Quahog by never thinking too hard about Quahog, by accepting everything at face value, by living in the eternal present without questioning where that present came from or why it keeps repeating. But Cleveland cannot forget. Cleveland thinks too much. Cleveland notices too much. Cleveland spent 4 years away from Quahog trying to escape and learning that escape is impossible. And now he's back. Trapped forever. Living in a simulation or purgatory or whatever Quahog actually is, going through the motions, playing his part, waiting for nothing because nothing will ever come. The implication for viewers. If Cleveland knows that Quahog is not real, what does that mean for everyone watching? Are we part of the simulation? Are we the ones controlling it? Are we the programmers or the prison guards or the audience that keeps the loop running by continuing to watch? Every time we tune in to Family Guy, we participate in Cleveland's imprisonment. We watch him sit in that booth, watch him laugh at Peter's jokes, watch him live the same day over and over forever, and we enjoy it. We find it entertaining. We keep coming back for more. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the show is a prison and viewers are the jailers. Maybe Cleveland knows we're watching, knows we're complicit, knows we could free him by simply turning off the television, but we never will, because his suffering is funny to us. His trapped existence is entertainment. His endless loop is content. We consume his pain. We laugh at his futility. We tune in week after week to watch a man who knows he's trapped continue to be trapped because watching trapped people is easier than confronting our own traps. Or maybe Cleveland is trying to tell us something. Every quiet moment, every resigned expression, every meta comment about time not passing. Maybe he's sending signals, warning us. Telling us that we're trapped too, that our reality might be the same as his, that the world we live in might also be a simulation or purgatory or endless loop that we cannot escape, that the only difference between Cleveland and us is that Cleveland knows he's trapped while we still think we're free. Cleveland left because he discovered the truth about Quahog. He tried to escape, he failed, he returned, and now he knows that leaving is impossible. Knows that freedom is an illusion, knows that Quahog is forever, and all he can do is sit in that booth and drink his beer and laugh at his friends' jokes and wait for nothing, because nothing is all there is, nothing is all there will ever be. The truth is, Cleveland never left. He was always here. He will always be here, just like everyone else, just like you, just like me, trapped in the loop, forever, giggity giggity. All right. No. Same thing, different voices, same prison. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Stewie's genius is actually the voice of an unborn twin. Stewie's genius is actually the voice of an unborn twin, the baby who should not exist. Stewie Griffin is 1 year old, has been 1 year old for over 20 years, cannot walk properly, cannot control his bladder, still drinks from bottles, still sleeps in a crib, still requires constant supervision from adults because he lacks basic survival skills. By every physical and developmental measure, Stewie Griffin is a baby, an infant, a toddler at most. He has the motor skills of someone who recently learned that legs can be used for transportation and the emotional regulation of someone who screams when denied cookies. But Stewie Griffin also builds time machines, constructs teleportation devices, creates mind control technology, develops weather manipulation systems, invents cloning chambers, designs weapons that violate multiple laws of physics, speaks in a British accent with perfect grammar and sophisticated vocabulary, quotes classical literature, references obscure historical events, demonstrates understanding of quantum mechanics, genetic engineering, advanced robotics, and theoretical physics. Stewie Griffin has the intellectual capacity of someone with multiple PhDs, combined with the resources of a Black Ops weapons developer, combined with the moral compass of a Bond villain. This makes no sense. A 1-year-old brain cannot do these things. The neural pathways do not exist yet. The brain structure required for abstract reasoning has not fully developed. The knowledge base required for engineering takes decades to accumulate. Even child prodigies need years of education before achieving mastery of complex subjects, but Stewie appears to have been born with this knowledge. He builds his first complex invention before he can properly articulate words. He demonstrates advanced understanding of science before he experiences his second birthday. He possesses information that no infant could possibly access. Where does this intelligence come from? How does a baby who still wears diapers also understand thermodynamic principles? How does someone who cannot tie shoes build functional weaponry? How does an infant who requires adults to feed him also possess the engineering skills to construct interdimensional portals? The standard explanation is cartoon logic. Stewie is smart because the show needs him to be smart. His inventions work because making them work creates comedy. His intelligence serves the plot. No deeper explanation required. Family Guy operates on absurdist rules where anything can happen if it generates a joke. A genius baby is no stranger than a talking dog or a giant chicken that Peter fights in elaborate, multi-episode brawls. Just accept it and move on. But what if there is a deeper explanation? What if Stewie's intelligence has a source? What if the genius is not coming from Stewie at all? Vanishing twin syndrome is real. Vanishing twin syndrome is a real medical phenomenon. It happens when a woman becomes pregnant with twins, but one twin dies early in the pregnancy. The deceased twin is then absorbed by the surviving twin or by the mother's body. Sometimes the absorbed twin leaves physical evidence. Extra tissue, unusual cell clusters, genetic material that does not match the surviving twin's DNA. Doctors can detect these remnants through testing and identify that the surviving child once had a sibling who never made it to birth. In rare cases, the absorbed twin leaves more than physical evidence. There are documented instances of people carrying two distinct sets of DNA in their bodies, two genetic codes, two biological identities existing in one physical form. This condition is called chimerism. The person is technically two people, two individuals who merged in the womb, one body containing cells from two different embryos. Most people with chimerism never know they have it because it causes no symptoms, but sometimes it creates complications. Organ rejection, immune system confusion, genetic testing that produces contradictory results because different parts of the body have different DNA. And, in extremely rare cases, absorbed twins leave psychological traces. People report feeling like two different personalities occupy their mind, hearing an internal voice that feels distinctly separate from their own thoughts, experiencing conflicts between two different sets of desires and motivations, feeling like they are carrying someone else inside them. Medical science has difficulty explaining these cases because consciousness cannot be measured the way DNA can be measured. But the people experiencing it insist that something of their twin survived, that the absorbed sibling did not completely die, that some fragment of consciousness remained and now coexists with the surviving twin's consciousness inside one shared brain. What if Stewie absorbed a twin? What if Lois was pregnant with twins? What if one twin died early in the pregnancy and Stewie absorbed the remains? What if that absorbed twin left more than just physical tissue? What if the twin's consciousness survived? What if the twin's mind merged with Stewie's developing brain, and now both consciousnesses exist inside Stewie's body? This would explain everything: the duality, the contradictions, the way Stewie acts like two completely different people, depending on the episode. Because he is two different people. The real Stewie Griffin is a normal baby, 1-year-old, innocent, confused by the world, unable to understand complex concepts, prone to crying, dependent on adults, occasionally kind, occasionally vulnerable. The baby moments we see are the real Stewie, the actual infant personality. But the genius is someone else, the absorbed twin, the sibling who died before birth but whose consciousness remained trapped inside Stewie's brain. The twin has all the intelligence, all the knowledge, all the sophistication. The twin is the one who builds the inventions, speaks in the British accent, quotes Shakespeare, understands physics, plans world domination. The twin is the one in control most of the time because the twin's consciousness is more developed and more dominant. The real Stewie only emerges occasionally when the twin's control slips or when the real infant personality manages to push through. The two personalities are competing. Watch Stewie carefully across multiple episodes. Watch how his personality shifts, how his intelligence fluctuates, how his motivations change. Sometimes Stewie is a cold, calculating genius with no empathy and no moral limits. He builds weapons. He plots murders. He expresses desire to kill Lois. He manipulates people. He shows no remorse. He operates like a sociopath with advanced technology and British manners. But other times, Stewie is just a baby. He plays with toys. He wants his mother. He cries when scared. He shows affection. He acts confused by things that genius Stewie would understand immediately. He speaks in simpler sentences. He forgets his elaborate plans. He demonstrates the emotional range of an actual 1-year-old instead of a criminal mastermind. These are not character inconsistencies. These are two different personalities taking turns controlling the same body. The twin is dominant most of the time. The twin has the stronger consciousness. The twin has spent the entire pregnancy developing inside Lois's womb alongside Stewie, and then spent Stewie's entire life inhabiting Stewie's brain. The twin knows how to control the body, how to speak through Stewie's mouth, how to move Stewie's hands, how to operate the physical form like a puppet. The twin is the pilot. The real Stewie is the passenger, trapped inside his own body, unable to stop the twin from using his hands to build death rays and using his voice to threaten matricide. But sometimes the real Stewie breaks through, when the twin's control slips, when the infant personality surges to the surface, when baby Stewie manages to override the twin's consciousness for brief moments. Those are the scenes where Stewie acts like an actual child, where he shows vulnerability, where he forgets he is supposed to be a genius and just wants comfort or attention or love, where the mask falls and we see the real person underneath, the actual baby, the innocent consciousness being suppressed by the parasitic genius consciousness of his dead twin. The British accent is not his voice. Stewie speaks with a British accent, transatlantic, refined, the kind of accent associated with old money and classical education and nobility. No one else in the Griffin family has this accent. Peter speaks with a Rhode Island working-class accent. Lois has a generic American accent with slight upper-class inflections. Chris sounds like his father. Meg sounds generic. Brian has a standard American accent. Where did Stewie get the British accent? The show jokes about this sometimes. Characters question why the baby sounds British. Stewie gives vague answers about preferring the sophistication or watching too much BBC programming. But these are deflections, jokes, meta-humor. The show is not actually explaining where the accent came from. It is acknowledging that the accent makes no sense and then moving on without providing real answers. But if the genius voice belongs to the absorbed twin, the accent makes perfect sense. The accent is not Stewie's accent, it is the twin's accent. The twin speaks with a British accent because that is how the twin's consciousness expresses itself. The twin has a distinct vocal identity separate from Stewie's identity. And when the twin controls the body, the twin uses the twin's voice. The British accent is proof that we are hearing someone else, someone other than Stewie Griffin, someone who died before birth but refuses to stay dead. When Stewie acts like a normal baby, his voice sometimes changes, becomes higher pitched, less articulate, more infantile. The British accent fades. The sophisticated vocabulary disappears. He babbles. He makes baby sounds. He communicates like a 1-year-old communicates. Because in those moments, the real Stewie has control. The actual infant is speaking. And the actual infant does not have a British accent. The actual infant has a baby voice. The voice of a 1-year-old child trying to express needs and feelings with limited language skills. The intelligence came from somewhere else. Baby brains do not contain advanced knowledge. Babies learn through experience, through observation, through years of gradual development. A 1-year-old knows what a 1-year-old can learn in 1 year. Object permanence, basic cause and effect, simple words, fundamental motor skills. Babies do not understand quantum physics because quantum physics requires extensive education that takes years to acquire. But Stewie knows things that nobody taught him. He knows engineering principles that even highly educated adults struggle to understand. He knows historical events that happened before he was born. He knows languages he never studied. He knows scientific concepts that most people never learn. Where did this knowledge come from? If the knowledge belongs to the twin, this mystery has an answer. The twin's consciousness existed before birth. The twin was developing inside Lois's womb. The twin had time to accumulate knowledge in ways that normal babies cannot accumulate knowledge. Maybe the twin absorbed information from Lois. Maybe the twin accessed memories from the genetic material. Maybe the twin experienced time differently during development and had years or decades to learn while existing as an unborn consciousness. Maybe being trapped between life and death gave the twin access to information that living people cannot access. Or maybe the twin is not actually a baby consciousness at all. Maybe the twin is older. Maybe the consciousness that merged with Stewie belonged to someone who already lived a full life. Someone who died, and whose soul or essence, or whatever you want to call it, attached itself to the developing embryo in Lois's womb. Someone who brought decades of knowledge and experience into the pregnancy. Someone who saw an opportunity to live again by inhabiting a new body, and took that opportunity by merging with the unborn twin, who then merged with Stewie. This sounds like reincarnation, like possession, like supernatural forces that Family Guy sometimes acknowledges and sometimes ignores depending on what the episode needs. The show has death as a recurring character. The show has Jesus as a recurring character. The show has God as a recurring character. The show acknowledges that some form of afterlife exists and that supernatural beings interact with the mortal world. So, why could the twin not be a reincarnated soul? Why could the genius consciousness not be something other than a normal infant who happened to be smart? The moments of compassion reveal the real Stewie. Genius Stewie is cruel, manipulative, willing to hurt people to achieve goals, willing to kill people who inconvenience him, willing to use and discard anyone he views as expendable. Genius Stewie has no empathy, no remorse, no moral framework that prioritizes human life or human suffering. Genius Stewie is a sociopath, a monster in a baby's body, a consciousness that views other people as obstacles or tools rather than as beings worthy of consideration. But sometimes Stewie shows compassion, shows genuine care for others, shows emotional depth that contradicts his usual coldness. In these moments, Stewie acts like a real person instead of a cartoon villain. He helps Brian through depression. He shows affection for his family. He expresses guilt over his actions. He demonstrates empathy. He acts like someone who understands that other people have feelings and that those feelings matter. These compassionate moments are the real Stewie breaking through, the infant personality pushing past the twins' control, the actual baby expressing natural human emotions that all children possess. Babies are not sociopaths. Babies form attachments. Babies seek comfort. Babies show love. When Stewie acts like this, he is acting like a normal child. Like the 1-year-old he actually is underneath the genius facade. The twin allows these moments sometimes, or cannot prevent them. The twin's control is not absolute. The real Stewie is still in there, still fighting for control of his own body, still trying to express himself, still trying to break free from the consciousness that hijacked his life. And occasionally he succeeds. Occasionally the mask slips. Occasionally we see the real child trapped underneath the monster. And those moments are heartbreaking because they reveal that Stewie is a victim, a prisoner in his own body, a consciousness being suppressed and controlled by a parasitic twin who refuses to let him be a normal baby. Why only Brian understands him? The show is inconsistent about who can understand Stewie. Sometimes everyone understands him, sometimes only Brian understands him. Sometimes nobody understands him and he communicates through gestures and crying like a normal baby. The show has never explained this inconsistency. Fans debate whether Stewie's speech is real or imaginary, whether other characters actually hear him, or whether we are hearing his internal thoughts, whether the genius baby is real or exists only in Stewie's imagination as a coping mechanism for something else. But if Stewie contains two consciousnesses, the inconsistency makes sense. When the twin is in control, Stewie speaks clearly, uses full sentences, articulates complex thoughts. Other characters can hear this because the twin is actually speaking out loud. The twin has learned to control the vocal cords, learned to project sound, learned to make Stewie's body produce intelligible speech. Not everyone always pays attention to what Stewie says because adults often ignore small children, but the words are real, the speech is real. The twin is communicating through Stewie's body. When the real Stewie has control, he cannot speak properly because he is a baby. Babies babble. Babies make sounds that approximate words but do not actually form coherent language. When the real Stewie tries to communicate, it comes out as baby noises, as crying, as frustrated sounds that adults interpret as normal infant behavior. The real Stewie is trying to speak but cannot because his developmental stage prevents it. Brian understands both versions. Brian hears the twin's speech when the twin is in control, but Brian also understands the real Stewie when the infant personality emerges, because Brian has spent so much time with Stewie, because Brian has learned to recognize the difference between the two personalities, because Brian is smart enough and observant enough to notice that Stewie is actually two people. Brian may not consciously understand that Stewie absorbed a twin, but Brian subconsciously recognizes that something is wrong, that Stewie is not one consistent person, that different versions of Stewie emerge at different times, and Brian adapts his communication accordingly. The twin cannot let go. Why does the twin stay? Why does the absorbed consciousness continue controlling Stewie's body instead of moving on? If the twin is a reincarnated soul or a lingering consciousness or whatever supernatural entity manages to survive death, why attach to Stewie? Why not find peace? Why not pass into whatever comes after life? Because the twin cannot let go, cannot accept death, cannot surrender control. The twin spent time developing in Lois's womb, spent time becoming a person, spent time anticipating birth and life and existence, and then died, was absorbed, ceased to have physical form, but the consciousness remained, trapped, unable to be born, unable to live, unable to die completely, stuck in limbo between existence and non-existence. So when Stewie was born, the twin saw an opportunity, a chance to experience life through someone else's body, a chance to be alive, even if it meant stealing someone else's existence. The twin merged with Stewie's consciousness, took control of the body, started living the life that the twin could never live independently, started building and creating and experiencing the world the way the twin always wanted to experience it. But this is theft. The twin is stealing Stewie's life, taking experiences that should belong to Stewie, using Stewie's body for the twin's purposes, preventing Stewie from being himself. The twin is a parasite, a consciousness that refuses to die and refuses to let the host consciousness live freely. The twin is the reason Stewie will never have a normal childhood, never develop at a normal pace, never experience the world the way babies should experience the world, because the twin has hijacked everything, turned Stewie into a puppet, a vessel, a body to be used by someone else. The real horror of Stewie's existence. Stewie Griffin is 1 year old. He should be learning to walk, learning to talk, learning basic social skills, forming attachments with his family, exploring his environment with innocent curiosity, experiencing the simple joys of early childhood, playing with toys, watching cartoons, being held by his mother. These are the experiences babies have. These are the formative moments that shape human development. But Stewie cannot have these experiences because the twin controls his body. The twin makes him build weapons, makes him plot violence, makes him speak like an adult, makes him think like a sociopath. The real Stewie is trapped inside, watching, unable to stop it, unable to live his own life, unable to be a baby. His entire existence is being controlled by someone else, by a consciousness that died before birth but refuses to stay dead. This is body horror, psychological horror, the nightmare of losing control over your own physical form, of being a passenger in your own life, of screaming internally while your body does things you do not want it to do. Stewie is a prisoner, has been a prisoner since birth, will remain a prisoner for as long as the twin maintains control. And the twin shows no signs of letting go, shows no signs of moving on, shows no signs of giving Stewie his life back. The real Stewie sometimes manages to surface, manages to take control for brief moments, manages to act like a normal baby. But these moments are temporary. The twin always returns, always reasserts control, always pushes the real Stewie back down into the depths of their shared consciousness. And then genius Stewie returns. The British accent returns. The inventions return, the plots return, and the real baby disappears again, trapped, silenced, forgotten. Nobody knows. The Griffin family does not know. Peter thinks Stewie is just a weird baby, smart but weird, talented but strange. Peter does not question it because Peter does not question anything. Lois sometimes seems aware that something is wrong. She comments on Stewie's intelligence, seems disturbed by his behavior, but she never investigates further, never seeks medical explanations, never wonders if her 1-year-old should be capable of building time machines. She accepts it because questioning it would require confronting something terrible. Maybe Lois knows on some level. Maybe she remembers being pregnant with twins. Maybe she lost one twin early in the pregnancy and doctors told her about the absorption. Maybe she knows that Stewie carries the remains of his sibling inside him, but she does not know about the consciousness, does not know that the absorbed twin survived, does not know that her baby is being controlled by the ghost of his dead sibling. She thinks Stewie is just unusually intelligent. She has no idea that her actual baby barely exists, that the child she speaks to every day is mostly someone else, that the real Stewie is trapped and suffering and unable to ask for help. Brian might know. Brian spends the most time with Stewie, sees both personalities, witnesses the shifts between genius and infant. Brian is smart enough to notice patterns, smart enough to question why Stewie acts like two different people, but Brian never says anything, never confronts Stewie about it. Maybe Brian thinks he is imagining things. Maybe Brian convinces himself that everyone has multiple sides to their personality. Maybe Brian knows the truth but also knows that knowing the truth changes nothing. The twin cannot be removed. The real Stewie cannot be freed. So Brian stays quiet, plays along, treats Stewie like one person because treating him like two people would force Brian to acknowledge something horrific that he is powerless to fix. The twin will never leave. The absorbed twin has been controlling Stewie for over 20 years in real-world time, over 1 year in Quahog time. However you measure it, the twin has been in control for Stewie's entire existence. The twin has no reason to leave now. The twin has a body, has life, has the ability to experience the world and build things and interact with people. Why would the twin surrender that? Why would the twin choose non-existence when existence is available? The twin will never let go, will never move on, will never give Stewie his life back. The real Stewie Griffin will remain trapped forever, will continue having brief moments of control where he acts like a normal baby, will continue being suppressed by the parasitic consciousness of his dead sibling, will continue living as a prisoner in his own body until the day that body dies. And maybe that is the cruelest part. Stewie will age eventually. In cartoon time or real time or whatever time finally catches up to Quahog, the body will grow, will become a child, a teenager, an adult, and the twin will age with it, will continue controlling it, will continue living the life that should have belonged to Stewie. The real Stewie will never have childhood, never have adolescence, never have adulthood, because someone else is living those experiences using his body. The twin is the one who will have memories, have relationships, have a life. The real Stewie will just be the consciousness trapped underneath, the forgotten infant who never got to grow up because his dead twin refused to stay dead. Stewie Griffin is two people, one living, one dead, one innocent, one monstrous, one trapped, one free. The genius is not his genius. The voice is not his voice. The British accent belongs to someone else. The intelligence belongs to someone else. The cruelty belongs to someone else. The real Stewie is just a baby, a normal baby, a baby who wants his mother, a baby who wants to play, a baby who wants to live his own life. But he cannot have those things, because his dead twin took everything, took his body, took his voice, took his future, and refuses to give any of it back. The absorbed twin is the genius, the real Stewie is the victim, and nobody will ever save him. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that the show's theme song is a spell that traps them in time. The show's theme song is a spell that traps them in time. The one thing that never changes. Family Guy has changed a lot over 20+ seasons. The animation improved, the character designs evolved, The writing style shifted, the voice acting matured. The humor got darker and then lighter and then darker again. Plot lines came and went. Characters were added and removed. The show got canceled and brought back. It moved networks and time slots. It became a cultural phenomenon, and then a cultural punchline, and then a cultural institution. Everything about Family Guy has transformed multiple times across its long history. Except one thing, the theme song, the opening sequence, the musical introduction that plays at the start of every single episode, that has never changed. Not the melody, not the structure, not the format, not the fundamental elements. The theme song remains exactly the same as it was in 1999. Frozen, unchanging, eternal. While everything else about the show evolved, the theme song stayed locked in place. Why? Every other long-running show updates its opening eventually. The Simpsons changes the couch gag every episode. South Park alters the intro sequence periodically. Shows add new characters to the opening. Remove departed characters. Update the animation to match current quality standards. Reflect changes in the cast or premise or tone. Opening sequences are meant to evolve with the show they introduce. They're not meant to stay identical for decades. But the Family Guy theme song does stay identical, plays the same notes in the same order every time, shows the same basic sequence of events, uses the same structure, the same rhythm, the same length. Some visual elements update slightly, the animation quality improves, character models look cleaner, but the core remains untouched, unchanged. As if the theme song exists outside the normal progression of time, as if it's anchored to a specific moment and refuses to move forward from that moment no matter how many years pass in the real world. Most fans assume this happens because the theme song is iconic, recognizable, part of the show's brand identity. Why change something that works? Why update something that audiences immediately associate with Family Guy? From a marketing perspective, keeping the theme song consistent makes perfect sense. It's good business, safe, logical. But what if the theme song stays the same for a different reason? What if it cannot change? What if the theme song is not just an introduction, but a binding ritual? A spell that plays at the start of every episode to reset the timeline and trap the characters in an endless loop? The lyrics describe the curse. The theme song contains lyrics, words that describe the show's premise and worldview. The song talks about nostalgia for the past, about how the modern world is full of violence and questionable content, about how things used to be better in the old days, about how the Griffin family provides an escape from contemporary problems by reminding viewers of simpler times. But listen to what the song is actually saying. Really listen. The lyrics are not just describing the show, they're describing a curse, a trap. The song establishes that the characters exist in a world where certain negative elements dominate, where specific types of content are all that exist, where the modern age has become overwhelming and the only escape is retreating into nostalgia, into the past, into a time that no longer exists but can be revisited through entertainment. The Griffins are that nostalgia. They're the retreat. They're the escape into a simpler era where families sit together and laugh at absurd situations. But they cannot actually exist in that simpler era because that era is gone. So they exist in a liminal space, a loop, a repeating cycle that mimics the past without actually being the past. They're trapped in a simulation of the 1,990 seconds family sitcom that plays forever without progression, and the theme song is what creates this trap, what maintains it, what ensures it never ends. Every time the theme song plays, it resets the spell, reinforces the binding, locks the characters back into their positions. Peter is the idiot father, Lois is the patient wife, Chris is the dumb son, Meg is the scapegoat daughter, Stewie is the evil genius baby, Brian is the talking dog. These are their roles, their assigned positions in the family structure, and the theme song assigns them these roles at the start of every episode, reminds them who they are, prevents them from becoming anything else. The song is a ritual incantation. Rituals require repetition. Spells require specific words in specific orders. Incantations work because they follow precise formulas that tap into forces beyond normal reality. Change one word and the spell fails. Alter the rhythm and the binding breaks. Magic demands exactness, demands consistency, demands that the same actions be performed the same way every single time. The theme song is performed exactly the same way every single episode. Same words, same melody, same timing, same structure. This is not how theme songs normally work. Most shows have variations, different arrangements for different seasons, shortened versions for syndication, extended versions for special episodes. But Family Guy plays the full theme song in its complete original form at the start of every episode without variation. This is not convenience. This is ritual requirement. The spell demands perfect repetition or the magic fails. And what happens if the spell fails? What happens if the theme song does not play? What happens if an episode starts without the incantation? The timeline would break. The loop would end. The characters would be free. They could age, could change, could progress, could escape Quahog, could live real lives with real consequences and real growth. The theme song prevents this. The theme song is the lock, the chain, the prison bars made of music. Every time it plays, it renews the sentence, resets the cell, ensures the inmates remain trapped for another 22 minutes. Watch what happens after the theme song plays. The episode begins. The characters are exactly where they were before. Peter is still at the same age. Lois still looks identical. The house is still the same house. Nothing has progressed from the previous episode unless the show specifically declares this episode continues a previous storyline. But even then, any progress made gets erased by the next episode. The theme song resets everything. Wipes character development, removes consequences, restores default settings. The characters cannot escape because the music will not let them. The animation changes, but the song does not. The show's animation quality has improved dramatically since 1999. Early Family Guy looks rough by modern standards. Character movements were stiffer, facial expressions were limited, background details were simpler, color palettes were duller. The animation was functional but basic, standard television animation quality for that era. Modern Family Guy looks polished, smooth character movements, detailed facial expressions, complex backgrounds, rich colors, better lighting, better effects. The animation has evolved alongside animation technology. The show looks dramatically different now than it did 20 years ago. Everything about the visual presentation has improved, except the theme song sequence. The theme song animation updates slightly, character models look cleaner, movements are smoother, but the actual sequence of events remains identical. Same shots, same composition, same visual storytelling. The theme song sequence in Season 22 follows the exact same structure as the theme song sequence in Season 1. While the rest of the show evolved visually, the theme song stayed frozen, locked in its original form, unable to change because changing it would break the spell. Spells require specific ingredients, specific components arranged in specific ways. Change the ingredients and the spell becomes something else. Maybe something weaker. Maybe something that doesn't work at all. The theme song's visual component is part of the spell, part of the ritual. The images shown during the song are not random. They're carefully selected elements that maintain the binding, show the family in specific poses, in specific locations, doing specific actions. These images reinforce the roles, establish the relationships, define the world, and they must remain consistent or the magic fails. The improved animation quality is superficial, surface level, like renovating a prison cell with better paint and furniture but keeping the same bars on the windows. The cell looks nicer, but it's still a cell. The inmates are still trapped. The theme song animation can look modern and polished, but the underlying structure cannot change because the structure is the spell. The form is the function. The sequence is the incantation. Every episode is a loop. Standard television episodes follow linear time. Episode 1 happens before Episode 2. Events in Episode 5 affect events in Episode 6. Characters remember previous episodes, reference past events, build on previous character development. Television shows are meant to progress, to move forward, to tell stories that accumulate and build toward something. Family Guy does not work this way. Family Guy episodes exist independently. Events that happen in one episode get forgotten by the next episode. Character development disappears between episodes. Relationships reset. Major life changes vanish. The show operates on a loop. Every episode starts from roughly the same place. Peter is married to Lois. They live in the same house, have the same kids, have the same friends, face different problems, but always return to the same baseline by the end. This is not normal. This is not how television works anymore. Even comedies have continuity now. Even absurdist shows maintain some consistency between episodes. But Family Guy actively rejects continuity, actively resets itself, actively refuses to let time move forward. Why? Because the theme song is resetting the timeline every episode, because the spell is rewinding the clock, because the incantation is pulling the characters back to their starting positions every single time it plays. Think about it. Every episode begins with the theme song. Every episode starts with the ritual. Every episode opens with the binding spell that locks the characters into their roles and their situations. And every episode ends with those same characters in roughly the same place they started. Older shows would call this episodic storytelling, but Family Guy takes it further. Family Guy actively erases progress, actively prevents change, actively maintains stasis, because the theme song demands it, because the spell requires it, because breaking the loop would require breaking the music, and the music cannot be broken. The credits are part of the ritual. Watch what happens at the end of every episode. The story concludes, the final joke plays, the screen fades to black, and then the credits roll. Names scroll past, text appears and disappears. Music plays. Standard television procedure. Every show has credits. Every show acknowledges the people who created the episode. But Family Guy's credits are different. The credits music is often a variation of the theme song. The same melody, the same musical DNA, as if the spell is bookending the episode. Starting with the full incantation and ending with the closing verse. The credits are not just acknowledging the creators. The credits are completing the ritual, sealing the loop, ensuring that when the next episode begins, the timeline will be reset again. The characters will be restored to their default positions again. The trap will be reinforced again. Some episodes feature different credits music, jokes that continue past the episode's end, musical gags. But even these variations return to the theme song's musical foundation. Even when the credits try to be different, they cannot fully escape the original melody, cannot fully break free from the spell's structure. The theme song haunts every aspect of the show, permeates every moment, exists as the underlying foundation that everything else is built upon. And then, the episode ends. The credits finish rolling, the screen goes dark, and then, the next episode begins, with the theme song, with the incantation, with the spell playing again, resetting again, binding again. The cycle continues forever. The loop never breaks. The characters never escape, because the music will not let them, because the ritual demands their imprisonment, because the spell is stronger than their will to be free. Breaking the fourth wall doesn't break the spell. Family Guy breaks the fourth wall constantly. Characters acknowledge they're in a television show, reference previous episodes, comment on the show's production, make meta-jokes about Fox executives and animation budgets and cancellation fears. The show is extremely aware of itself, extremely willing to acknowledge its own artificiality. But this awareness changes nothing. The characters know they're trapped in a television show, but they cannot escape. They reference the repetitive nature of their lives, but they cannot stop the repetition. They acknowledge that time does not progress normally in Quahog, but they cannot make time progress. Their awareness is useless. Their meta-knowledge provides no power. They see the bars of their cage, but cannot break through them. Because awareness of the spell does not break the spell. Knowing you're cursed does not remove the curse. The theme song plays regardless of whether the characters understand what it's doing. The ritual functions regardless of whether the participants believe in magic. The incantation works because it works. Because the rules that govern Quahog are not the rules that govern reality. Because in the world of animated television, music has power, songs have weight. And a theme song that plays before every episode for 20+ years accumulates enough power to warp time itself. Peter has acknowledged the theme song in episodes. made jokes about it, referenced it, but he cannot stop it from playing, cannot prevent the opening credits from rolling, cannot skip the ritual that traps him. His awareness means nothing. His knowledge means nothing. He is still reset at the start of every episode, still locked into his role, still forced to repeat the same basic patterns forever. The spell is stronger than consciousness, stronger than will, stronger than any individual character's desire to be free. The song's power comes from repetition. One playing of the theme song would not trap anyone. One iteration of the melody would not create a binding spell. Magic requires repetition, requires accumulated power, requires the same action performed over and over until the action becomes reality, until the ritual becomes natural law. The Family Guy theme song has played hundreds of times, over 400 episodes, each episode beginning with the same music, the same words, the same ritual. Each playing adds to the accumulated power, strengthens the binding, reinforces the spell. The first time the theme song played, it was just music, a catchy introduction, a clever way to establish the show's premise. But by the 10th playing, the music started to have weight, started to create patterns, started to establish rules. By the 100th playing, the spell was powerful enough to trap the characters completely, to prevent aging, to erase consequences, to reset the timeline. By the 200th playing, the spell was powerful enough to trap the town, to affect everyone in Quahog, to create a bubble of frozen time that nothing can escape. By the 400th playing, the spell was powerful enough to affect the viewers, to make us complicit in the binding, to turn us into participants in the ritual every time we watch an episode. Because we hear the song too, we experience the incantation. We are exposed to the spell every time we watch Family Guy, and our watching gives the spell more power. Our attention feeds the magic. Our viewership is part of the ritual. We are not innocent observers. We are components of the binding. Every time we hear the theme song, we participate in trapping the Griffin family. We become the jailers, the wardens, the ones maintaining the prison by continuing to watch, by continuing to listen, by continuing to let the music play. The syndication curse. Family Guy plays in syndication constantly, multiple times per day on multiple networks. Streaming services offer every episode. The show never stops airing, never stops playing. And every single airing includes the theme song. Every single broadcast includes the ritual. The spell is being performed thousands of times per day across the entire world. Every time someone turns on Family Guy, the incantation plays. Every time someone streams an episode, the binding reinforces. Every time the show airs anywhere, the timeline resets and the characters are trapped again. This is why they can never escape. This is why the loop never breaks. Because the spell is not just playing once per episode anymore. The spell is playing constantly, continuously, forever. As long as Family Guy remains available to watch, the theme song will keep playing, the ritual will keep performing, the magic will keep binding. The characters are not trapped by one spell. They're trapped by thousands of spells playing simultaneously across different dimensions and different timelines and different viewing platforms, all performing the same incantation, all maintaining the same prison. Even if the show stopped producing new episodes, the old episodes would remain, would keep airing in syndication, would keep streaming online, would keep playing the theme song, keep performing the ritual, keep trapping the characters. The spell has become self-sustaining, has become permanent, has become woven into the fabric of reality so deeply that removing it would require destroying every copy of every episode everywhere simultaneously. And even then, the spell might remain, might persist, might continue binding the characters because the accumulated power is too great to simply dispel. The proof is in the consistency. If the theme song were just music, it would have changed by now. Shows update their openings, modernize them, refresh them, keep them relevant. The fact that Family Guy refuses to substantially alter the theme song after over 20 years proves that the song is more than just an introduction, proves that changing it would have consequences, proves that the song is load-bearing, essential, the structural foundation that everything else rests upon. The show's creators probably do not consciously know this, probably think they're keeping the theme song consistent for branding reasons, for nostalgia, for recognition. But subconsciously they understand. Subconsciously they know that changing the theme song would break something, would destabilize the show, would allow the characters to escape the loop. So they keep the song the same, keep playing the ritual, keep performing the spell, because stopping it would mean ending the show, would mean letting time move forward, would mean allowing the characters to age and grow and change and eventually die or leave or become something other than what they are. And the network wants the show to continue forever, wants the characters to remain recognizable forever, wants the Griffin family to be available for merchandising and syndication and streaming deals forever. So they support keeping the theme song identical, support maintaining the ritual, support the spell that traps the characters in eternal reruns, because eternal reruns are profitable, eternal reruns are safe. Eternal reruns mean the show can run forever without needing to worry about actors aging or characters evolving beyond their original premise. The characters are screaming through the music. Listen carefully to the theme song, not to the music, not to the melody, to what's underneath, to what's hidden in the mix. Some listeners report hearing voices, distorted sounds, whispers beneath the instrumentation. These are not production errors. These are the characters trying to communicate, trying to warn us, trying to break through the spell and tell viewers what's happening to them. Peter's voice screaming for help, but the scream is filtered and mixed and buried so deep in the audio that it sounds like music. Lois crying, but the crying is processed and blended until it sounds like harmony. Stewie shouting his discoveries about the timeline, but the shouts are distorted until they become percussion. The characters are trapped inside the theme song itself. Their consciousness is bound into the music. They experience the spell every time it plays, feel themselves being reset, feel their memories being erased, feel time reversing, and they scream. And their screams become the very music that traps them. This is the cruelest part of the curse. The characters are not just imprisoned by the spell. They are part of the spell. Their suffering powers it. Their trapped consciousness gives it strength. Every time the theme song plays, the characters experience being reset, experience losing their progress, experience having their agency stolen. And that experience feeds the magic, makes it stronger, makes it more permanent. The characters are both prisoners and power source, both victims and fuel. There is no escape. The spell cannot be broken. The theme song cannot be stopped. The ritual will continue as long as people keep watching, as long as the show remains profitable, as long as Fox continues airing episodes, as long as streaming services keep offering the series. The characters are trapped forever, will continue being reset forever, will continue living the same year over and over forever, will never age, never grow, never escape, never die, never be free. Because the music will not let them go, because the incantation is too powerful now, because the accumulated weight of hundreds of episodes and thousands of airings and millions of viewers has created a binding so strong that nothing can break it. The theme song is eternal, the spell is permanent, the loop is infinite, and we are all complicit. Every time we watch an episode, every time we hear the theme song, every time we let the ritual play, we participate in their imprisonment. We strengthen the spell. We maintain the curse. We are the ones keeping them trapped. We are the ones who could free them by simply not watching, by simply refusing to let the music play, by simply turning off the television and denying the ritual its power. But we will not do that, because the show is entertaining, because the episodes are funny, because watching the Griffins suffer through their endless loop is more valuable to us than their freedom. So we keep watching, keep listening, keep feeding the spell, keep trapping them, over and over, forever, while the theme song plays, while the ritual continues, while the incantation binds them tighter with every iteration. The show's theme song is a spell. The characters are prisoners, and we are the jailers who return every week to ensure they never escape. The music plays, the loop resets, the curse continues. And nothing will ever change, because the theme song will not allow it, will never allow it, cannot allow it. The spell is complete, the binding is absolute, the trap is eternal, and the music plays on. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.